everyone, my name is Lindsay Jane and welcome to the Solarpunk stream. Today I will be playing part 4 of Gilded Shadows, and let's just jump right into it. Alright. There we go. Alright. Each time my fist hit the punching bag, the counter on the side increased. It was currently at 50. The sensors also recorded the amount of force behind each punch, but it hadn't budged for a while now. In fact, after nearly an hour of working out, it had decreased slightly. It was time for a break. I grabbed the bag to steady it, resting my forehead against it momentarily. Watching myself get further away from the goal Ari had set for me was frustrating, even though he told me to not really worry about it for now, since it would take time to build up that much strength. I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand and lifted my ponytail off my neck. Now, if my teacher would just show up. This was the third day in a week that he was late. There was a prickle at the back of my head, and I turned towards the door about 2 seconds before the person there spoke. She grinned as soon as our eyes met. Not bad. I glanced back at the punching bag with a faint shrug. It's okay, I guess. I still haven't hit the goal yet or anything, but I'm improving slowly. I wasn't talking about the punches. You noticed me before I said anything, didn't you? Oh, I faltered. Had I? I guess I'd felt something. I hadn't given it much thought. Why else would you turn around before I even said anything? I guess I did. Van came further into the room, still grinning. Well, it's pretty good that your senses are already improving that much. Ari's meditation techniques must be working. Ari's techniques? He made it seem like they were a pretty standard thing for everyone around here. Or do you use different ones? I pulled the gloves off and went for some water, while Van made her way to the punching bag. I use similar techniques sometimes. I don't need it as much, so I don't do it nearly as much as he does. I haven't had to for a really long time. I never had much trouble controlling or using my abilities. I guess I was probably your age when I stopped doing it, unless I'm having a bad day and need to clear my head a little. Don't say it like you're so much older than me. I am so much older than you, kiddo. I rolled my eyes at her, though I couldn't keep the smile off my face. Even so, I'm not that young. At the very least, you've got a few years on those junior agents that keep following you around. They've got years of training experience on me. They don't really follow me. Some of them seem to have taken a pretty keen interest in your progress. I made a face at that. I knew who she was talking about, and I really didn't want to think about it. That person had taken an interest because she saw me as a threat. Several tense interactions over the past few days had made that clear. Well, in any case, potential is as important as training experience. So you keep saying. As I took a sip of water, I watched Van take a stance in front of the punching bag and throw a punch. My eyes widened as I watched the force measurement on the side shoot up. I know she has a cybernetic augmentation, but that's insane! She tipped her head to the side to check her score, then quickly twisted the bag to get a better look. Whoa! Who the heck set this on 2,500 for you? Well, Ari said it was sort of a benchmark. He didn't think I'd actually hit it anytime soon. He said that well-trained agents can get up to 2,800 pretty easily. Or, 3,324 if they're you. Van laughed at that, looking down at her hand as she opened and closed it. Well, I'm not going to lie. The Z-Siltan skeleton and muscle fibers in your arm and my arm and shoulder help. What is this interesting augmentation? Also sometimes spelled Z-Siltan. This is a metallic glass made of zinc, silicon, and titanium that is used for many advanced cybernetic prosthetics. It's also used as one of the base materials for neo-human skeletal and muscular structures, as well as many of their organs. This alloy is lightweight and has both high tensile strength and resilience, making it an excellent choice for a high variety of use in multiple fields. Neat. Show off. Impressed? Not anymore. That's harsh. Anyway, where's your teacher? He wasn't answering messages, so I figured he was busy with you. And yet, here you are, alone. I haven't seen him. We were supposed to start at 7 o'clock. He's nearly an hour late, as you can see. Ari is late? Is the world ending? Should we go find a window and check? I think the world is probably fine. He did let me know he was behind schedule this morning. Again. But he's been late nearly every day this week already, and he usually gets called out early, too. Those jerks on the council really aren't giving him much time to rest, are they? I guess the situation on Syrie is really that bad. Syrie? Caleb told me they're having him teleport people somewhere. I trailed off, the realization hitting me. Are you suggesting Ari is teleporting people to the moon? Surprised? No, I'm saying it this way because I'm completely not surprised by it. That's unbelievable. How far is a range? Is something like that even normal? That depends on your definition of normal, I suppose. I had no idea he was capable of something like that. I assumed Ari was teleporting people to another city or something. Well, Syrie is the only big thing going on right now. I guess I thought there might be something surface side that I wasn't aware of. I am still a complete newcomer. I assume there are things I'm not being told about. Fortunately, no. It's just Syrie. No wonder Ari looks so tired these days. Yeah, he works hard, and he doesn't usually question it when they ask him to do something. He just does it. Even when he's completely exhausted? That isn't healthy. I mean, I know there's the whole chain of command thing here, but I don't think working at Endgame should mean obediently exhausting yourself just because someone told you to. Trust me, I totally agree with you on that. But no matter how much we tell him to speak up, he says it's fine. She stepped off the mat and joined me where I was leaning against the wall. So how are you two getting on anyway? Everything going okay? We're getting along fine. He's been very helpful, though I'm sure having to teach me from the ground up is frustrating. Ari isn't the sort to get frustrated by that. At the very least, I doubt he enjoys it. Anyway, we had dinner once, but I think he's been too busy for it since. He's probably a lousy dinner companion anyway. Don't say that. Everyone picks on him way too much, and it's better than eating alone. What are you two even talking about? He can make it seem like there isn't much more to him than work. Honestly, he mostly listens to me talk. He asks about my studies, my family, what I did before coming here. And it never occurred to him that some of that might be hard to talk about? Maybe he assumed I'd tell him if I didn't want to talk about it, which I would. Avoiding talking about it doesn't fix the situation. Besides, it's still something I'm passionate about. I don't mind sharing my experiences. When I thought about what he said about how there was not much more to Ari than work, I couldn't help but wonder if it was because that was true for a lot of people here. That could be why some younger agents were so competitive. I'm glad I'm already used to not having a social life, I guess. Anyway, outside of that, how's your training going? Fantastic. I'm basically a complete expert at falling down now, and getting back up, since that's the important part. We've graduated to blocking, punching, meditation, and I was cleared for side training. Though we haven't gotten very far. We've been working on clairvoyance and awareness for a couple of days now. Well, it looks like you're progressing quickly in that area. It's difficult to say. We haven't exactly gotten far. He's taught me about the concept of cages and spheres. That's probably why you noticed me so quickly earlier. I have been working on a sphere aspect, since that seems to be Ari's forte. What is a sphere aspect? A sphere is the name given to an Esper's psychic awareness, but it can also refer to the range of their abilities. For instance, a knight's ability to teleport is limited to the range of their clairvoyant awareness. Neat. And because of that, I need to work on that before the cage thing. And what is the cage thing? Cage and reverse cage. A cage is a psi technique that involves an Esper focusing on a specific location within their sphere in order to block out the superfluous input and target in a single area with a condensed psi energy. Cages are used for a variety of purposes, such as during teleportation to pick a target location. Interesting. Alright. You seem to be getting a hang of it if earlier wasn't any indication. I wasn't really trying to do that, though. That's the whole point. Your sphere is just your general range of awareness. Once you open up to the idea of being aware of more than what you can naturally see and hear, it doesn't matter if you're trying to be aware of it. A cage is what requires focus, because that's when you're trying to hone in on something specific. The hardest thing for most people is turning it all off. That's the reverse cage thing Ari mentioned. Yep. Though whether you actually need to worry about what that will be based on how strong your general awareness is. For Ari, the reason why meditation is so important is that he's too aware of his surroundings. He needs to stay focused so he can block it all out. I mean, that can be a problem for many of the really adept clairvoyants, but even more so for Ari. His sphere is massive, as you can imagine. If he can teleport people as far as the moon, yeah, pretty massive. And we don't really even know the upper end of his range. That's a scary part. Unlike most people who feel outward from themselves in a fairly even radius, Ari can change the shape of his sphere, which he can extend his range very far in a single direction. Imagine having even a subconscious awareness of everything within that kind of massive sphere. I mean, you wouldn't be able to function, would you? Pretty much. But that also makes him a great person to teach you about this kind of stuff. He has a lot of experience with it and can probably explain it way better than someone like me. I thought this sort of was a bishop's forte. What kind of bishop even are you? The kind that is incredibly good at telekinesis. All of that brain stuff just makes my head overheat. Literally all psi is brain stuff. She laughed at my teasing. Anyway, since Ari's late and not answering my messages, why don't we head down to the lounge for a while? This place smells like sweaty socks. I mean, that's probably me you're smelling. It smells like that no matter who's here. Besides, you look like you can use a break. It's only been an hour. Like I said, it's a good time for a break. Alright, so we have two options. I'll stay and wait a little longer, and alright, let's go. I personally feel like she should maybe stay there a little bit longer, because she seems to be having her instincts tell her to just stay there. So, alright. I'll stay and wait a little longer. Alright, I'll stay and wait a little longer. Seriously? He's an hour late. I know, but since I can't reach him right now, I don't want to leave and have him show up without knowing where I am. He can always send you a message. But when we're face to face, he'll give me that look that makes me feel like I've disappointed my father. I'm not sure he'd approve of knowing you see him as a father figure. Oh, believe me, I don't. But he's very good at doing that fatherly disappointment thing. I'll have to take your word for that. I'll give him another half an hour, that's all. Damn right. Then I'm going to come back to check, and if he's not here, I'm going to initiate a little kidnapping of my own. Please don't. I never thought I'd say this, but I've definitely experienced all the kidnappings I need to experience in my life. After Van left, I picked up the gloves I'd been using before and slipped them back on. Hopefully Ari would show up soon. I'd gotten too used to having someone direct my training sessions, so working alone felt weird. Taking up my stance in front of the punching bag again, I lifted my hands to the position Ari taught me and started flailing at it with renewed vigor. I'd like to think my punches looked as amazing as they felt, but I suspected I'd die of embarrassment if I could actually see myself. My workouts were light, but I was gaining an appreciation for how hard agents here work to stay in top form. As I tried to better my previous score, I thought about Ari. He was sending people all the way to Syrie, and so frequently. It made me worry even more about what was happening up there. Ugh. Okay. Thanks for letting me know that my stream still said Terranil. I did try changing it before. Oh, I love technology. Alright, there we go. It said it had updated before, but... Alright, fixed it. Thanks for letting me know. Alright, Oliver was head of agriculture on a fringe settlement, so I doubted he was in any danger, which was a relief. Based on what the news was saying, all the riots and protests were in major cities, but that was before all the communication channels went dead. As it was now, we only knew what little could be gleaned from sparse reports coming out. Ugh. I wondered where exactly Endgame's teams fit in everything. What were they doing up there? Law enforcement? Relief efforts? Evacuations? None of those boded well for the colonists. There was a sudden sharp pain in the back of my head, and I whirled around. Heidi was standing at the door, arms crossed, watching me with the same cool expression she always seemed to have when she looked at me. The silence dragged out, and when it appeared she wasn't going to say anything, I did. Sorry, this room has been reserved for my training session. Oh? Aren't you supposed to have a personal teacher here for those? Ari's late. Well, I guess there are a lot of things more important than teaching an outsider the basics of how to function here. The acid dripping from her tone caught me off guard. She'd said a few things about that seemed a little pointed, but she'd never been openly rude. Lovely. I wasn't in the mood to deal with something like this. It wasn't like I was trying to be an outsider. Did you want something, Heidi? Or did you just stop by to pick a fight? Because it's the latter, I have other things to do. If I wanted to pick a fight, you wouldn't stand a chance. You're right, I wouldn't. You'd surely pulverize me with your superior skill and technique. Now that we've established that you have the upper hand, can you please leave? I'm trying to focus. Do you even know how much time is being invested in your training? Time people could be spending doing things more worthwhile. Ari has responsibilities that are more important than dealing with some novice who lucked into her position. I really didn't want to deal with her at the moment. I understood her frustration, but I had things to do. I'm sorry, but I'm busy at the moment. If you need Ari, I'll tell him when he gets here. That's a bit cold. I just wanted to stop by and see how you were doing. Sure. I'm doing fine, but I'm trying to focus here. Well, most beginners do have focus problems. Do you need something in particular? If you want to have a chat about my status, I'm sure we'll see each other at the lounge, like we always do. Not that you've ever spoken to me there before. Her eyes narrowed slightly at that remark. Well, it's not like you've ever come over to say hello, either. I could point out that it's really difficult to approach people who have a tendency to whisper about you when you've walked past. I wasn't trying to pick a fight with her, but honestly, she and her group always lurked and watched me. None of them had ever bothered to speak to me, so why bother with any sort of pretense at this point? I said nothing and turned my back to her again. If I ignored her, she'd surely go away at some point. I can't believe Ari has to waste his time training someone like you. Though it isn't as if you're the one who decides whether it's a waste of time for me to work with someone. Heidi's eyes went wide as she whirled around. Ari stepped around the doorframe and barely looked away as he walked toward me. Ari, I didn't mean... If you'll excuse us, I'm very late, and we don't have time for this. He wasn't angry or anything. There was no emotion in his voice at all. It was almost worse than being angry at her. Heidi seemed to think so too. She shot me a poisonous glare as she left, and retreated, leaving me both confused and exasperated. Ari looked my way, but I shrugged. I was practicing when she showed up and tried to pick a fight. I see. She and I had a conversation earlier. I didn't realize she would come here before me. a conversation about... It's irrelevant, and not if the end result means she comes to pick a fight with me. She is frustrated that I continue to reject her requests to train her, that's all. Perhaps we should get started. We've lost a lot of time. I'm not the one who was late. I got started a long time ago. I apologize for my tardiness. That was a joke, Ari. I'm not mad. I studied him a moment, worried. He didn't usually respond to humor anyway, but... You look really tired. Are you sure you're up for this? I can always call Vanessa. Or Caleb. He offered to take over as well if I needed him to. Do you really wish to train with Caleb? Well... No. Then perhaps we should stop chatting and get to work to make the most of the time we have left. Jeez, everyone was in such a lovely mood today. When Ari started working on his warm-up stretches, I went through them again as well. I was watching him carefully, and after a while... Ari, that's the 4th time you've gone today. Are you sure you're all right? I apologize. I was called in earlier than usual this morning. It seems like they're requiring a lot of you these days. It can be hectic when there's an ongoing crisis like the one on Sari. Is teleporting that far difficult? Long-distance teleportation isn't all that tiring in and of itself, though anything above 3 people can be a struggle, even for shorter distances. And we're taking entire teams back and forth. It's not like work. You shouldn't concern yourself with me. You have your own training to worry about. I can't not worry about you, especially when you look exhausted and are grumpier than usual. I don't think my behavior is grumpy. Yeah, it is, just a little. Then I apologize for that as well. It has been hectic, and Heidi's growing insistence I help her achieve her goal is not helping. I'm sorry. I feel like if I wasn't here... If you weren't here, I still wouldn't train her. I'm not an appropriate teacher for her, and I don't believe she has the potential to achieve queen rank. How can you be sure if you don't give her a chance? He stopped and sighed. Must we discuss this? I'm sorry. I hated this sudden tension between us. We may not normally have riveting conversations, but at least it wasn't like this. What did you work on earlier? I stopped when a notification arrived. That's unusual. I pulled up the screen, surprised to see I was being called to a meeting with Magnus. Ari too, actually. I could see that he was mentioned as well. In fact, your entire guard is being called in right away. What's going on? Perhaps it's an assignment. With the current state of my training? My heart went into overdrive. An assignment? Was I being sent to Cyree with some of the others? Already? I was so not prepared for that. Ari's hand closed gently on my arm. I don't know what is going through your head right now, but it's probably nothing like what you're imagining. No one is going to send you into a dangerous situation as you are now. I believe we had this conversation. You're right. I'm sorry. We won't know until we go in. The meeting is in 15 minutes. Perhaps you should take the opportunity to get cleaned up. It might be wise to change into your uniform as well. My uniform? Do you intend to go to an official meeting as you are? No. It's just that I'd never worn the uniform before. Not out of trying it on when I first got here. I was still self-conscious about it. I also need to get ready. Our lesson for today will need to be postponed. I'll be in front of your door in 12 minutes to pick you up. After that, it was a short jog back to my room so I could clean up. There wasn't time for much more than a quick shower to get the sweat off. Then the uniform. Sleek, fitted, and so different from anything I'd worn before. It was strange pulling it on. It was probably a good thing I didn't have much time to ruminate on it. I'd barely managed to get dressed and get my hair in a passable state before Ari arrived for me. Not alone, though. As I opened the door, Van and Caleb were both waiting with him. Ooh, you look so great in that. Doesn't she look great? She elbowed Caleb, who just stepped around her with the usual expression. She's here now. Let's go. He stopped a few feet past her and looked back at me with a slight smirk. But I guess she looks almost passable. Hey! Don't listen to him. You look amazing. The uniform does suit you. Oh. Thanks. Somehow when he said it, my face heated up. Maybe because he's essentially been my teacher this whole time. It felt like getting approval from someone that really mattered. Either way, we didn't wait around after that. The four of us set off for Magnus' office. The stares we got were both embarrassing and, I don't know. The others were elites on their way to do something important, and I was an imposter beside them. That's how it felt anyway, as much as I tried to ignore it. I half expected the rest of the first guard to be waiting for us at Magnus' office, but he was alone when we filed in. He flashed a brilliant smile as soon as he saw me. Ah, is that your uniform? It looks so lovely on you. How exciting. Are you finally beginning to feel like one of us? She has been one of us for quite some time already, has she not? In fact, she was no longer an outsider from the moment she chose to join Endgame. If she was an outsider, she wouldn't be here. True, true. Please come in and have a seat. Unfortunately, I did have a reason I called you all here. He didn't wait for us to do so before he began speaking. I'm sure you're aware of the latest developments of the situation on Cyre by now. With more and more mining outposts joining the strike, the government has cut supply chains in an attempt to regain control. This has led to rioting in the major cities. There are even protests here on Arcalis. Fighting has broken out in several places, and as of this morning, dissidents have taken over several government buildings. The rest of the ministers are holed up in the capital. It sounds like this is a lot more than a few riots. Many are trying to downplay the situation, but it does seem likely it will become a full revolt this time. All transport to and from Cyre ceased as of 2 days ago after a cargo transport was shot down. Casualties? Many. Each side is blaming the other, which has put a stall on a potential ceasefire negotiations, but we're still pushing for it. If we manage to succeed, I wanted to let you know that we'll likely send the entire Queen's Guard, Morgan included, to oversee the arbitration team. Don't you think it's a little early for something like that? This is an important matter. Endgame needs to treat it with full gravitas, even if that means a small show of power. Morgan's existence hasn't even been publicly announced yet. My existence? Endgame has yet to publicly announce a Queen-ranked Esper has joined. Normally, that would be considered newsworthy. I'm sure the Council will find a way to manage that. I'd hoped it wouldn't get this bad up here there. My getting involved hadn't even crossed my mind until today, but overseeing peace talks wasn't as bad as I'd feared. After all, we wouldn't be leading them, just watching, I presumed. The citizens of Cyre have long believed that they were being treated unfairly and were exploited by the Triad. The provisional government put in place there after the last revolt has done almost nothing to address their concerns. It's unfortunate, but the situation was inevitable. Almost definitely. It seems that several factions have been smuggling in weapons for the last year in preparation for it. Beyond mediating peace talks, what's Endgame's role in all this? For the time being, we are assisting in getting civilians out of any areas where there are fighting. We're also getting medical supplies and aid to the more remote outposts or anywhere else it's needed. What about evacuating civilians to Arcalis? Unfortunately, the Triad has put up a blockade and is refusing to allow anyone on or off the surface. Magnus was silent for a moment, watching me carefully. I'm sure you're concerned for your acquaintances there. My brother can hardly be called an acquaintance, Magnus. Brother? I had no idea about that. He's not in a major city, so I doubt he'll be near any violence. It's possible he's somewhere that's facing supply shortages then. Van elbowed him in the gut. Before I dismiss you, there's one more thing. The UTG has alleged that the dissidents have recruited and are using unregistered espers as part of their fighting force. Of course, we know full well that Cyre has a higher than usual population of unregistered espers, and it's no secret that just about everyone wants to recruit them. Generally, they prefer to lie low, however. We don't yet know the severity or truth of these allegations. The Moirai are looking into it, but have limited luck. The use of espers in a fighting force of this kind would violate multiple conventions and treaties regardless of whose side they were fighting on. This would present further difficulties in our attempts to mediate the situation, so it's something we need to be aware of. We'll keep all of you apprised going forward. If we're able to get both sides to agree to a ceasefire, you could be sent up on very short notice. There will be daily updates for the time being. Read them carefully so you're up to date on any new developments. He smiled brightly. That's all for now. I apologize for interrupting your training, Morgan. All of us but Ari were dismissed after that. Apparently, they needed his help to bring more people back from Syri and send another team up. I didn't know if the reports coming out publicly were made to make the situation sound less severe than it was, or if things had turned sour faster than the news and than the networks could keep up, but I hadn't got the impression things were as dire as Magnus had indicated. I couldn't get my head around the idea I might be involved in it, even just to oversee negotiations. That thought occupied my mind for the rest of the afternoon and evening. I stayed glued to news reports until bed, but they never discussed the severity of fighting or said anything about espers being involved. The disparity between what they were reporting and what Magnus had told us was strange to witness. I hope they called a ceasefire soon. As I rolled over for the 20th time and stared up at the ceiling with a frustrated groan. I can't sleep. It'd been happening more and more often, though I had a better reason for it tonight than usual. I sat up, rubbing my face as I let out a low sigh. Syri and the growing problem there, Heidi and her insistence I was an outsider. The strange way those two things intersected just kept my thoughts racing to the point I couldn't relax. I had tried Ari's meditation technique earlier, but soon learned that it was even more difficult to sleep when my thoughts were calm. I was suddenly incredibly aware of what was going on next door with my two very much in love neighbors. Sorry, Van and Mara. Definitely didn't mean to spy on that. Sometimes clairvoyance wasn't what it was cracked up to be. I finally tossed the blankets off and decided maybe I should go for a walk. Lying in bed wasn't doing me any good. The galley was closed, but there might be a few people in the lounge. Or not, there were other places I could go to clear my head without becoming unfortunately aware of anyone else's late-night activities. At first, oh, that is so pretty! Oh my gosh, I love the artwork for that. Oh my gosh. Ugh. I love the fact that you can look at this and actually identify what the different species are with it. Like, this is so lovely. At first, I'd stopped by the lounge, but it was empty and dark. I'd left a few minutes later. I eventually found myself in the garden, which was actually one of my favorite spots. I cannot blame you. Van had first showed it to me on the day she'd given me my tour. It was overflowing with plants and the soft flow of water with a fountain-fed stream that wound its way through everything. It was lovely and serene. And I wasn't the only one who'd come here for a late-night walk, apparently. Because I rounded a corner to find Caleb, walking alone, looking down at a digital display in hand. Wonder what he's looking at. He looked up and frowned when he saw me. I half expected to get a scolding for wandering around alone. Can't sleep? Not really. I guess there's a lot on my mind lately. What about you? He shrugged, stopping in front of a bench between where he was and where I was standing. He tipped his head towards it as he sat, an indication for me to join him, it seemed. I hesitated. I hadn't really been looking for a company, but I suppose it wouldn't hurt. Worrying about the meeting today? That's only one part of it. You're thinking about that infantry brat and what she said earlier. You heard about that? Things will get around. Mostly because Van doesn't know how to shut her damn mouth sometimes. If she hears about it, everyone in the organization will know about it soon enough. Well, that's terrifying. All bishops are like that. So what's with you and your dislike for bishops? Who knows? Wow. Informative. The smile faded, and I drew my legs up to my chest. I guess I can't say that isn't part of what's keeping me up. Well, you shouldn't lose any sleep over it. It's just some kid whining about not getting something she wanted. I don't think the problem's as simple as that. I'm sure it's hard to accept a complete outsider in this role. Didn't you hear Ari today? You're not an outsider. You never were. It's a nice sentiment. You disagree then? I guess I do still feel a little like an imposter. Yeah. Listen, you're here. Heidi's complaints aren't going to change that. I was kind of surprised by how much he chilled out since my arrival. I mean, he was still gruff at times and everything, but he was way nicer than he had been. Anyway, you agree with me, right, Ari? He leaned back to cast a look at something behind me. I twisted around to see that Ari was, in fact, lurking nearby. His back was against a vine-covered wall as he listened in. I didn't even notice him. Ari met my gaze as he straightened. Where did you... I saw when you left the lounge earlier. I didn't wish to disturb you, but I was concerned. And I do agree, yes. So you just silently stalked her from all the way up there, not happy with a kidnapper title and feel you need an upgrade? Hardly. I simply wanted to make sure she was all right. I'm fine. Just a little insomnia. Caleb stretched out his legs and put his hand behind his head. Welcome to Endgame. I made room for Ari on the bench as he joined us, gently chiding Caleb for making it seem like Endgame was filled with a bunch of insomniacs. I listened to their back and forth for a while, resting my chin on my knees. Too bad Van isn't here, then the group would be complete. I smiled to myself. Maybe some company exactly what I needed. It was about an hour later before I finally thought I might be able to sleep. Caleb still seemed wide awake when we left him reading alone in the garden. I wondered if insomnia really was endemic in this place. Ari, unsurprisingly, walked me back to my room. Though, to be fair, he lives right next to me anyway. You still look tired. I hope you're going to bed after this. Indeed, I'll be going to my flat soon as well. We walked silently for a while before Ari spoke again. I was thinking about our earlier conversation about Heidi. Oh? I know it bothers you to think you took a position someone else wanted, and that you struggle to understand why I have rejected her requests for training. You don't have to explain yourself to me, Ari. I wish for you to understand. I don't want you to think I'm simply being cruel. I never thought that. He frowned slightly before he continued. I don't want a misunderstanding to inhibit your ability to trust and learn from me. That would never happen, but if you want to explain, I'm listening. I simply don't want her to hurt herself. I don't believe she can achieve what she wants. One needs to have the right motives and focus, neither of which she possesses. I don't believe acquiring a promotion to impress something is something I should encourage. Who is she trying to impress? I realized it was a silly question before he gave me that look. The risk of what she's attempting is too great for her to only be doing it for my sake. And my agreeing to train her would only encourage those feelings, and I don't think it would actually help her improve. So that's the real reason you believe it's a waste of time? Calling it a waste of time is, perhaps, overly harsh. I understand, and I don't want you thinking I'm judging you for your decision. It's your choice who you work with. Even if I didn't question her motives, I don't believe I would be able to teach her what she needs to learn. Then why are you willing to train me? Because if it's due to orders, I don't... No, that isn't why. Then why? I don't dislike training you. That wasn't exactly glowing praise, but coming from Ari, it was close enough. That's good to know. And Morgan, I put in a request for them to reinstate your communication with the outside so you can contact your parents. Oh? When? Why? Most communication between Cyri and Archelaus are cut off, but it's possible your parents heard something of your brother's situation prior to that happening. It seemed to be weighing on your mind. You didn't have to do that. I know, but if I hear anything before you, I'll be sure to alert you. Thank you. He turned to leave, but I caught his sleeve. And worry about yourself a little too. It's okay to tell people you need a break. You shouldn't work yourself to the point of exhaustion. And if you don't feel you can ask for a break from the helping with the Cyrie incident, it's okay to take a break from training me. There are other people who can fill in. A troubled expression crossed his face and he looked away. I don't believe it's necessary, but if it's become a cause for concern, I'll consider what you've said. Good. You don't always have to push yourself so hard, you know. I'll bear it in mind. He nodded slightly and left me at my door. I stepped inside my flat as he went inside his down the hall. And now, maybe I could finally get some sleep. Chapter 6, Proving Ground. Alright. Ugh. Why couldn't I do this? I've done it before. Why is it so hard now? The more frustrated you get, the more difficult it will be to focus. The more you keep telling me that, the more frustrated I'll get. Unfazed by me snapping at him, Ari continued to watch with something that seemed suspiciously like amusement. There was a small whisper of laughter from near the door, and I tightened my jaw, annoyed that we somehow gathered an audience, and Ari hadn't bothered to shoo away the infantry and junior agents lurking. I turned my head that way, intending to give them what was probably not a very intimidating glare. Ari, just behind me, set his hands firmly on either side of my face and forced me to stare straight ahead. Ignore them. Then make them leave. We all must learn to focus through distractions. Currently, they're serving as part of your training. They're serving as an annoyance. Precisely, and you're allowing your frustration to become a hindrance. Instead of focusing on them, focus on destroying the target. The last time I did one of these, I destroyed a building, while you were inside it, if you remember. Then I suppose you must exhibit better control this time. He said it as if it was easy. If cybursts weren't difficult, then everyone would be able to do them. Ugh. Damn it. I let out a slow breath, trying to clear my head before another attempt. For better or worse, my training had been progressing fast. We'd moved from falling to fighting, and from simple clairvoyant awareness to telekinesis. I wasn't sure if it was because there was a rush on getting me to a less embarrassing stage of training because of Cyrie, or if this pace was the goal all along. Either way, Ari was pushing me hard. His specialty was teleportation, something he knew I could mimic, but he was worried whether I had the control to manage it without teleporting myself into a wall or something. So he decided to work on cybursts instead. Theoretically, if I could get a hang of doing these without mass destruction, he reckoned I'd also have the control to handle learning teleportation. And so, here we were. But I wasn't having much luck. Rather than destroying anything, I could barely even make a dent in the target. To make matters worse, somehow word had gotten around that we were working on my notorious cybursts, so even though Ari reserved the room for private use, other agents had gathered to watch. I tried shutting their whispering out as I closed my eyes again and attempted to focus on my breathing. At least Ari had given me a solid foundation in his meditative techniques before we got started working on this, but it was still distracting for there to be people in the door. I reflexively put up a reverse cage around myself to block out their presence. It had the immediate effect of dampening the prickly feeling of them watching me. Now, I could focus on my own psi waves. In my head, I perceived them like an image of glowing steam rolling off my body. I could see Ari's too, but with my reverse cage, his were faint and easy to ignore. Now, all I had to do was channel that energy towards the target. I opened my eyes at the same time I gave the energy a mental shove. It exploded away from me with enough force to make me recoil. A gasp sounded behind me. I panicked and tried to reach out to yank it all back. The resulting cyburst hit the target, leaving another small dent, but not much more. My head felt like it would split from trying to cancel it like that. So that was the legendary cyburst? What is she doing? If they're so confident, maybe one of them can stand up here and try to do it. Ari folded his arms, staring at the target thoughtfully for a moment. Why did you try to cancel it? It started out much stronger than your other attempts. I just panicked. It was stronger than I expected. I understand this is all new to you, but you need to learn to not be afraid of your abilities. Easy for you to say. Are you certain? Ari folded his left arm against his torso and rested his right elbow in his hand, pressing his fingertips to his temple. His head angled downward and he closed his eyes, tapping against the side of his face as he often did when he was thinking. He finally looked up again and turned towards the door. Heidi, why don't you come and demonstrate? She looked just as surprised as I was at that request. I understand you've raised your psi enough to be able to release a psi burst of your own. Was I incorrect? No. I can do it. I tried to catch his eye to at least glare at him, but he wasn't looking at me. Heidi joined us on the mat with a doubtful expression, taking position next to me. To my surprise, she didn't appear to relish the opportunity to demonstrate this for everyone. Perhaps it was just being the center of attention. It wasn't fun. Something I didn't understand what went on. Sometimes I didn't understand what went on in Ari's head. Given our interactions a few days ago, I didn't understand what he expected her demonstration to prove. Just as I had, Ari took a deep breath. She stared at the target intently, as if psyching herself up for what she was about to do. It seemed like she didn't wait quite as long as I had before I felt a burst of energy whirl away from her towards the target. It hit, crinkling the metal like paper. Definitely stronger than mine. My psi was supposed to be greater than hers, so why was her psi burst stronger? Heidi's eyes narrowed as a small, pleased smile formed. There were murmurs from the audience at the door. I gritted my teeth in frustration and annoyance. It's not like I was particularly competitive. Not in the sense of wanting to outdo other people rather than just doing my personal best. But I was really irritated at the moment. Thank you, Heidi. I tried to tune out everyone as I studied the target, thinking about what Ari had said before, about how I couldn't be afraid of my own abilities. Heidi probably had complete confidence that Cyburst would turn out the way she wanted. I didn't have the same confidence because I lacked her experience, and because last time it had turned out badly. This wasn't the same situation as back then. I wasn't scared, confused, or under attack. But knowing I was capable of that level of destruction was frightening. Respecting my abilities isn't the same as fearing them, though. That was probably the point Ari was trying to get across. There was no need to be recklessly confident, but that didn't mean the alternate was paralyzing fear. I had to find a middle ground. As I stood there thinking about it, Ari had Heidi return to the door. He leaned down to me again. If you want to show them you're not an outsider, and that you belong in the role you've been given, now is your chance. Wait, was the whole point of having her, of all people, do that to provoke me? Try it one more time. Alright. So we have two options. Do it again, you'll get it right this time. Or flexible, try to give it one more shot. Honestly, at this point, I feel like the best thing to do is just be stubborn. Sometimes with these different kinds of things, it's just best to press forward and believe in yourself. So, stubborn. Do it again. You'll get it right this time. Fine. I would do it right this time. I definitely would not allow Heidi to best me in this. I understood why they were all watching and laughing at my struggle. As someone raised outside this group, I didn't fit in or meet their expectations. But if I had to be here, I wouldn't let myself be labeled an outsider. I'd do my best, and I'd be respected for it. It was no different from doing my best at my studies. I shut my eyes and refocused myself. Forget Heidi. Forget Ari. Forget everyone. I didn't have to prove this to anyone but myself. And I didn't even have to prove it to myself, because I knew I could do it. I'd been the top in my studies, and I would be the top here. As soon as the mental image of my psi energy crystallized, I visualized a narrow tunnel between myself and the target. Condense it down as far as it will go so it won't run wild. Coil it up tighter. I pushed the energy away from myself with as much force as I could muster, and I didn't try to pull it back. This time, it shot away from me with enough force it nearly knocked me down. It struck the target hard. There was a flash that blinded me. I flinched, holding up a hand to shield my eyes. Behind me, there was a few panicked cries, scuffling of people moving around, then soft murmurs. But the ceiling wasn't coming down on our heads, so there was that. When I opened my eyes again, Ari was standing in front of me as if shielding me from something. He was looking over his shoulder at the target. What? I peered around him, freezing when I saw the damage that I had done. There was little left of the target beyond a twisted and smoking bit of scrap on the floor. The wall behind it had a hole in it, with cracks spreading out like a spiderweb from a massive scorch mark. There was debris scattered around the room, remnants of the target and probably bits of the wall as well. On the other side of the hole were a few concerned faces peering into our training room. Oops. I glanced up at Ari with an awkward smile. Oops. I supposed I encouraged you to do it. Oh, so it's your fault this time? I can accept that. All things considered, we should be glad you only destroyed part of one wall. And from the looks of things, you may have finally proved your point to some of those doubting you. Ari turned back to where the others were while I took a water break. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue our lesson in private. There were a few groans, but no one argued as they all filed out into the hall. I wasn't one bit disappointed to see them go. As soon as we were alone, I gave him the most annoyed scowl I could muster. You could have done that way sooner, and I wouldn't have complained. As I said, it's necessary to learn to focus, even with distractions. Heidi already hates me enough without you giving her even more reason to. Perhaps, but I merely observe. It worked. I glared at him. You know what? Van was right. You are a brat. His lips turned up at the corners. Perhaps. I hope I'm not interrupting. I was startled by the unfamiliar voice by the door, but Ari didn't appear perturbed by the unexpected intrusion. As usual. Someday, I hope I get to see him at least a little surprised. A woman standing in the doorway was someone I'd never seen or met before. She looked to be in her 80s, perhaps with faded blonde hair and bright blue eyes. In her 80s. Time measurement. Yeah. So, it's 1.5. 1 Earth year is 1.5 years on Arcalus. So, pulling out my handy-dandy calculator, if she's in her 80s, that means that she's in her 50s in Earth years. Now, an agent? I didn't get that sense from her, but something about her felt familiar. There were quite a few junior agents leaving just now. If I'd known your training sessions were public, I would have come by earlier. They are not. However, we managed to gather an audience today. It looks like I missed something exciting, though. Is this why you practice on one of those self-repairing rooms? Most of the stronger ranked agents do, and this was a normal session for us. She smiled slightly as she came further into the room. Ariel, you're forgetting your manners. You haven't forgotten us yet. You haven't introduced us yet. Honestly, I thought you'd gotten better at this kind of thing. Ari lifted an eyebrow, tilting his head as if it was only just occurred to him that was a thing he should do. Morgan, this is Charisse Ulrich. She's a member of the council. A council member? What was she doing here then? And Ulrich? Correct. She is Magnus's mother. That must be why she seemed familiar. It's a pleasure to meet you, Morgan. I apologize for not coming to greet you sooner. I was worried when I heard you were struggling with your sudden recruitment. I thought it might be best to give you time to become more settled. Magnus seemed to think that might be the case by now. Thank you. I appreciate you thinking of my comfort. It's nice to meet you too. I hadn't interacted with anyone from the council before, so I wasn't sure how to treat her. They were the governing body of Endgame, after all. Oh, excuse me. Ugh. I need a little bit of water. It's been quite a bit of reading. Alright. Ariel, as much as I hate to disrupt your session, would you mind leaving us for a bit? I wish to speak to Morgan alone. For the first time since I'd known him, Ari hesitated, but it was only for a moment. He nodded to me slightly, and without another word, strode out the door. It slid behind him. My, he's rather protective of you, isn't he? Is he? Well, I suppose it's easier to see for those of us who have known him longer. She took a seat on a bench and patted it, indicating I should come over and join her. I did so with hesitation, unsure what this was about. I've been keen to read your daily training reports for the last few weeks, Morgan, and I must say I'm impressed with your progress in such a short amount of time. When you started, you knew almost nothing about psi abilities, and now you're creating psi bursts of that magnitude. She nodded towards the target and damage to the wall. I'm not sure it's anything to be impressed by. Even some infantry are capable of this much. She laughed at that. Only if they're exceptional. And you're interesting, not for your current level, but for your growth potential and the speed at which you're learning. Ari's an excellent teacher. If I've learned anything, it's because of that. Oh, come now. There's no reason to be modest. If your school records are anything to go by, you've always been a hard worker. It's the only way to get by in New Albion. That is true, I suppose. Their system is ruthless when it comes to those who aren't at the top. Ruthless is one way to put it. There's a big push to always work hard. Even so, we were a little concerned with your ability to catch up with your training. With some other factions flaunting their queen-ranked espers, some of our members were worrying about our inability to locate one. Our ability to maintain the peace on this planet relies on our remaining the strongest, or there are those that believe that way. You aren't one of them? Let's say I believe strength is not always about brute force, though I don't regret that we brought you into the fold. I wasn't sure how I felt about being considered brute force. Charisse was silent for a moment before she continued. And how are you settling in here aside from training? Well, it's getting easier. I'm glad to hear that. I'm relieved the incident around your recruitment didn't impact your ability to work with Magnus and the others. I know it was difficult, but I hope you understand the Council made that call in the hopes that it would be best for everyone, even if it didn't go entirely as planned. The Council gave that order? Based on the recommendation of some of our bishops, yes. Magnus told me he made that call. He sighed softly, shaking her head. I was surprised by the sadness that flitted over her features. He always tries to shoulder everything alone, but no, it was the Council. None of the guard was thrilled with the plan, including my son. Interesting. But I can't help but wonder why she was here. Not just to chat about her son and my progress, I'm sure. May I ask why you wanted to speak to me today? Is that difficult to believe? I wish to get to know you a little better? No, it isn't that. I just assumed there was a specific reason. Well, it isn't, as if you're wrong, though I do like to speak with our agents sometimes. The Council is too inclined to stay shut up in our offices and meetings, making decisions about people we never speak to, and I don't think it hurts to get out every so often and interact with the agents personally. She laughed, a regretful sound at odds with how I'd come to imagine the Council. But unfortunately, I had another reason for coming here today. I know you've been updated on the situation on Syri. Yes, I was told the Queen Guards might be... Have they reached some sort of ceasefire? No, there's been a new development. You'll be receiving a briefing file soon enough, but I wanted to talk to you about it first. Morgan, there may be illegal experimentation going on somewhere on Syri. The sort that we would have to put an end to for everyone's safety. Experimentation of what? Weapons, or... Experimentation regarding espers. As soon as she said that, there was an uncomfortable pang in my gut. Why are you telling me this? There's a group of researchers arriving to Endgame from a small lab there. It happens from time to time. After all, our research division is one of the leading sources of psionics planet-wide. Much of our research is classified, but some of it is available to the public. We occasionally have teams that come to look at those journals or talk to our scientists. This group arrived to Arcalus about a day before the blockade went up and has been touring various facilities on the planet known to be doing studies into the fairy phenomenon. Oh no. I already had a feeling I knew where this was headed. We believe they may have ties to the dissidents, and may be involved in the alleged experimentation on Zyri. She paused, giving me a long, careful look. Is something the matter? I know someone who is researching espers on Cyree. Magnus and I have discussed him, and Magnus said he was coming here. I see. In that case, you can guess what I will say next. I know very little about what Trent Erickson was doing on Cyree, but his lab was being funded by the Triad. Officially, yes, 2 workers at the facility have been arrested in connection to the current revolt. One of them exhibited symptoms of burnout, despite not being an esper. Just confirming burnout. Burnout is a medical condition usually only suffered by espers. In its most severe form, it involves a complete and total shutdown of the phoric system and is usually permanent. However, burnout is described as a spectrum and can sometimes result in temporary damage that can be overcome, partially or entirely with therapy. You'll receive the full details of your briefing. However, there are concerns about the lab these 2 are associated with. Given the situation there, our ability to look into this is limited. It could make things worse or make our relief efforts more difficult if either side feels threatened by an investigation. So we decided it was easier to begin planet-side now where the opportunity has presented itself. What exactly are you planning for Trent's group? An interrogation? I can't imagine him getting involved with something like a rebellion. He's the sort that cares more about his work than anything. He wouldn't do anything to jeopardize it. Perhaps, but he isn't the only one on his research team or at this lab. We don't intend to interrogate anyone. We're hoping you can use your connection with him to get close to the group, find out if there's anything to these allegations. Your bishops haven't seen anything that indicates what's going on. Unfortunately, no. There's an entire star system and future for them to monitor. It'd be convenient if they could always see what we wish them to see, but it doesn't work that way. And they've yet to observe anything specific regarding this matter. I don't mind trying to find something out. I mean, I can't imagine it matters if I mind. If I'm getting a briefing report, that makes this official, doesn't it? Yes, but this is a tougher first assignment in some respects than you might hope for. I wanted to discuss it personally first. I think it'll be fine. I just worry I won't be able to learn anything useful. I'm sure you'll do your best. Of course, I always do. I'm glad to hear it, and now I believe you've taken enough of your time. I'll let you get back to training. Before you go, was there something else? Thank you for the reminder, Rev. Yes, I will hydrate. Thank you. Yay. Hydration. Alright. No. I wanted to ask her about my family, but Ari had already asked about that and heard nothing about it. Charisse probably had better things to do. I didn't want to pester her with this. It was important to me, but I was certain it would seem trivial to her. She regarded me silently for a moment. If there's something bothering you, please tell me. We want you to be comfortable here. I don't want to bother you with something like this. If it's something you're willing to bring to my attention, then I'm sure it's important. I don't know that it's important. If it's important to you, it's still important. I've been trying to get permission to contact my family. Ari asked about it recently too, but hasn't heard. I see. So they haven't restored your outside communications yet. I know there were concerns about their safety, but surely that's all settled now. Well, given everything that's happened since your arrival, I'm sure this request simply fell through the cracks. I'll see what I can do. I'm sure they're worried about you. And vice versa, of course. Thank you. I hate to bother you with it, but I'd appreciate your help. It's not a problem. She stood and smoothed the wrinkles from her clothes. I look forward to continuing to observe your growth, Morgan. And welcome to Endgame, even if it's late. I stood as well and walked her to the door. Just outside the hall, I was surprised to find Ari standing there, just waiting for us to finish. Probably so we could jump straight back into our training session. Honestly, this guy. Charisse broke into a smile when she saw him. Ariel, have you been waiting out here all this time? I have nothing else scheduled for this block of time. Where else would I go? You could have gone to wait in the lounge. There was no need. I was fine waiting here. Were you that worried about her? I was not concerned about you wanting to speak with Morgan. Is that so? She laughed as if she didn't believe him. And when she passed him, she gave his arm a slight squeeze. Be sure to watch over her well. I intend to. And with that, Charisse was gone, leaving Ari and I to get back to our training session. Ari didn't ask what we spoke about at all, and my mind was too full of everything we talked about to focus well for the rest of the day. I was standing in my shower with my back to the steaming water, letting it drum down over the sore muscles there. Our workouts had increased in intensity as we were also starting to branch. Our workouts had increased in intensity as we also started branching out and developing my psi. It meant our lessons had doubled in length, with us spending the first half on physical training and the latter half on psi training. I wasn't sure which was more exhausting. I stretched and finally turned off the water, stepping out of the shower. Tomorrow, I was sure he'd expect me to do even better than I had today. I didn't want to think about it, though if we gathered another audience, I would throw them out personally. I wrapped myself in a towel and grabbed another for my hair as I went to finish drying off and getting dressed. I just poured myself a cup of tea and flopped on the sofa when there was a soft ding inside my head. A message notification? I pulled it up, expecting the briefing file Charisse had promised earlier. When I saw the message with my mother's name above it, I bolted upright, sending the cup of tea flying. Ugh! I flailed at it frantically with both hands, and it stopped midair. The cup tilted several feet above the ground, with most of the tea frozen in its attempt to escape the cup and splash all over my rug. Well, that looks strange. In the middle of trying to scoop the liquid back into the cup while spilling as little as possible, my door chimed. It startled me enough that I lost focus, and a few splatters of tea headed straight for the ground, as if suddenly remembering gravity existed. Oh, great. I set the cup down and grabbed my pants, which I still hadn't bothered to put on. Making a mental note to get a towel to clean the spilled area, I finished dressing and answered the door, unsurprised to find it was Ari. Mostly because, besides Ari and Van, no one else visited. Hi, come in. Did something good happen? Yes. I grabbed his hand and pulled him into my apartment when it didn't seem he would come in on his own. He gave me a bewildered look that made me feel almost bad. I must never seem happy to him. Charisse seems to have done something about my net permissions. I just got out a message from Mum. Ah, was that something the two of you spoke about earlier? It came up towards the end, and she said she'd look into it. I'm glad to hear that it's taken care of. Is your mother well? I don't know yet. I haven't read it. I just got the notification and sort of spilled my tea in my excitement. I expertly avoided a mess, courtesy of telekinesis. Ari's gaze traveled to the teacup on the arm of the sofa, then the few spilled drops on the floor. Almost avoided. The door chime startled me. I apologize for interrupting then. No, it's fine. Anyway, you can sit if you like. I left him there and went to get the cloths from the kitchen so I'd clean up the mess. It's all right. Sit! He didn't seem like he was going to, but after a moment's deliberation, he must have changed his mind. He sat carefully on the sofa and watched me. Have you received the briefing file for... There was another notification right as he said that, and I pulled up the screen to check. It just arrived, actually. I see. I was also sent a copy. Caleb and Vanessa as well, I assume. Dropping the cloth on the bar, I joined Ari on the sofa. So that's why what you stopped by to discuss. Correct. Though if you haven't read it yet, there's not much to discuss. Well, Charisse went over the basics with me. There are concerns about experimentation. The lab the researchers are with may have ties to the rebellion on Cyree. I need to try to find out if anyone in the group knows anything about it. Morgan, are you comfortable with the assignment? I understand you know one of the researchers? New. I haven't spoken to him or heard from him in a year, not since he left for Syrie. Were you classmates? In a manner of speaking, we dated for 2 years and lived together for 6 months. I see. Is everything all right? Ari frowned, looking away. I noticed him clasping his hands together, tapping on the left one with the other one. I did not realize it was that close a relationship. It's not close anymore, if it ever was. He left a year ago, and I haven't heard from him since. People who are close don't break up with each other that way. Can it be there's some unpleasant feelings there? There were. There still are, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. He sent me a card the day before I joined Endgame. He said he would be on the server soon and he wanted to meet. I wasn't planning on taking him up on it. So he reached out to you after a year of silence. Is that not odd? Sometimes people do things like that, I guess. Maybe he just felt bad about disappearing without a word. Actually, Trent is the only person who was aware I was an Esper. Not that he realized my rank or anything, but he suspected I might be an F class. He knew my test had come back negative for any physiological markers. If you haven't read the briefing, then you don't know they believe the unregistered Espers blah 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 blah. Okay. If you haven't read the briefing, then you don't know they believe the unregistered Espers on Syrie were fairies when the reports began to appear. That was Trent's point of interest. The lab he was interning at was doing research on them. And of course, that's why they're coming here. Correct. F-class are still a minority in Endgame, but we possess the leading research on the phenomenon. Besides you and myself, there are only a few dozen others. Not all of us are publicly known to be such, though. My status is something of an open secret, and most of what Endgame knows about fairies comes from observing my development. Observing his development? That made him sound like a science experiment. Aside from that, all of that aside, we're not sure what's going on with the Espers on Syrie. They certainly show elements of being fairy Espers. However, the one taken into custody ended up not being an Esper at all. I'll read the full report as soon as possible. After, I hope you read and respond to your mother's message. The report can wait, but I'm sure your mother would like to hear from you as soon as possible. And you've waited for this message for weeks. I'm sure you want to read it soon. Yes, after that. Good. I'm pleased to hear your request was finally granted. Me too. We'll still be continuing our training going forward, but may need to adjust our schedule due to your other assignment. And I'll also be monitoring you as you engage with these researchers. They are still overworking you, I see. I wasn't specifically ordered to monitor you, given you'll be filing daily reports. I'm merely concerned. We've had this talk. Worry more about yourself. Sometimes it feels as if you worry about me enough for the both of us. Because you don't worry about yourself at all. It's annoying. I apologize. I'll try to be less annoying. Good, because that isn't even the only annoying thing you do. In that case, perhaps you can expound on all my annoying qualities over dinner. My mind blanked when he said that. Did he just... No. Ari and I had had dinner several times. Unless you had other plans? No, it's fine. Dinner is fine. Is there a problem then? No problem. You really need to work on your wording, though. Is there another way to ask someone to dinner? Maybe we'll talk about that over dinner. Then I'll leave you to rest for now, but I'll be returning at 7 o'clock. Sure, I'll see you then. Very good. He stood and almost smiled as he headed for the door. I followed behind him, mentally kicking myself for how he got my heart pounding. For a moment, I forgot where I was or who I was dealing with. Oh my god, this is so cute. And then And when I was alone again, I let out a little happy squeal and curled up on the sofa to read my message and finally replied to her. I need to find a way to thank Shyrese for that. Maybe I'll ask Ari about that during dinner as well. Chapter 7. Past meets present. Oh my goodness. Alright. I frowned at the display in my hand as I read over the briefing file I'd gotten yesterday. Shyrese neglected to mention that Trent and his group would arrive today. I thought I would have a little more time. Though I'd read most of it last night, nerves had taken a hold and I was going through it again. Ari had to cancel our training session at the last minute, so it gave me some extra time before I had to meet them. It was a little hard to focus. Ari said he would be overseeing everything, but they called him away. I couldn't reach Caleb or Vanessa either, and not that I felt I needed oversight, but the fact that the three of them were gone meant they were sent somewhere without me. And I wasn't even informed. Granted, it didn't matter whether or not they told me about it, but we were teammates, so it felt strange to be out of the loop. And it was frustrating being the only one left behind. I looked at the display again, trying to keep my mind on the task at hand. According to the report, Trent's group was coming to Endgame to look at the research records regarding fairy espers. I already knew that part. Endgame had multiple tiers of access for the research division and their materials. Most were unavailable to anyone outside the organization. Some were publicly available to anyone who wanted to look over them. One moment, I need some water. Alright. Somewhere in the middle was a section of materials you could get proprietary access to if you had special permission, or some kind of official backing, like from the Unified Triad government, who was, of course, funding the research at Trent's facility, so that's how they could get a peek at things. They wanted to look at information Endgame had about the structure of F-class psi waves for the purpose of developing medical technology. It sounded like something Trent would be interested in. There was some fairy rook reported as working in a clinic in Delphine. This person could apply biokinetic abilities to other people, resulting in some sort of healing ability. It wasn't some trivial thing. The reports were that this person had the ability to regenerate limbs and major organs aside from the heart and brain. If true, that was incredible for so many reasons, mainly because nanorooks weren't able to apply their biokinesis to other people. They had an innate ability to regenerate more quickly from injuries, but it was a passive skill that affected only their own bodies. Most of them couldn't do targeted healing, nor could they heal others. This rook in Delphine, if reports were true, had an amazing ability. Trent's lab had done some work with an anonymous fairy rook able to do something similar, but on a much smaller scale. They were hoping to study and replicate the psi waves being used by these espers. We had devices that could emit psi waves, something on par with what Endgame considered low-level infantry. They were sometimes used as weapons, but more often in a utilitarian capacity, such as construction work. It was about as close as a non-esper could get to our abilities. But they'd never be able to replicate rank-level specialized psi. I wonder what makes them think they can replicate fairy ranks easier. Fairy psi had some incongruities compared to nano-espers, so maybe that was why. Either way, it was interesting research. But given that fairies were uncommon, they had a shortage of research materials to work with. Hence their reason for coming to Endgame. Now though, Endgame was worried they could actually be looking for something else in the Science Division's research. Which brought me to the other element of the case. Unregistered espers joining the dissidents on Cyre. It was uncommon for ranked espers to make it to adulthood without being detected. Those who did always tried to find ways to avoid recruitment into Endgame and other factions. It seemed like that was the fate of most unregistered espers eventually. Finding ways to avoid it included traveling off-world for those who could manage it. For that reason, Cyre supposedly had a high number of unregistered espers living there. The Triad at several points requested Endgame to round them up. It sparked protests every time, and Endgame had never followed up on the request. That espers were showing up in the fighting now wasn't that strange. It was the nature of the espers they'd encountered that was the problem. It started with an attack on a government guard outposts. There were reports of Esper-like abilities being used, and one person arrested was experiencing burnout. He was the one Charisse had mentioned, but like she said, he wasn't an Esper. So why burnout symptoms? Both he and another person had casual connections to Trent's lab. I sat back in my seat, mulling it over. The current 3 was some sort of experimental product that allowed normal humans to temporarily use psi. The burnout patient didn't have any devices, implants, or drugs in his system, though. None that were detectable, anyway. What he did have was connections to a lab working on psi-mimicking technology. Was it possible for Trent to be involved in something like this? I wasn't sure anymore. I flipped to the next page of the report, scanning the images of Trent and 2 people coming with him to Endgame. He was the only intern in the group. I wonder if... I flicked my eyes towards the door, sensing Heidi's presence a few seconds before she came in. Our eyes met briefly. She had looked away and headed to the galley without acknowledging me. I sighed, watching her order a drink. Maybe I should pull my head out of this report for a while and just try to just talk to her. Things were still tense every time we saw each other, and I wasn't a fan. I had never dealt with a situation like this before, so I wasn't quite sure how to approach it. We had group projects throughout school, so it wasn't as if I was a stranger to teamwork or getting along with others. And we all competed for a limited number of first-tier slots, so I wasn't a stranger to competition either. But there'd never been unpleasantness between myself and the other students. Maybe because fighting with each other was a waste of energy none of us had to spare. Most of us just wanted to pass our tests and get some sleep. What should I do? Oh boy. Okay. So, we've got 2 options right now. We've got flexible, try to talk to her and clear the air, and cautious, give her some space for now. So earlier, she was going and complaining that you didn't try to, that Morgan didn't try to go and approach her either. So, I personally am leaning towards trying to go and talking to her and clearing the air, because honestly this just seems highly unpleasant to go and deal with. So I think probably try to talk to her and clear the air. I just needed to talk to her. Setting aside thoughts of Esper experiments and whatever else was going on in the outside world. I needed to be able to get along with other agents here. Heidi got her drink and sat at a table across the room. After a moment's deliberation, I joined her. She looked up when I reached her table, seeming both surprised and annoyed. Well, I can't exactly be shocked by that. May I sit? If I say no, will you leave? I expected that kind of answers, but I sat anyway and gave her a slight smile. No. She huffed an annoyance, but didn't move away. I knew you would do that. I just want to talk to you. Well, I don't. And I wanted to thank you for your demonstration yesterday during my training session. Why? Because it made you look better when you're able to pull off a decent cyburst right after that? It has nothing to do with either of us looking better than the other. I appreciate you trying to help. It's not like I was doing it to help you out. I only did it because he asked me to. Maybe that's true, but I wanted to thank you anyway. It's difficult being put on the spot in front of a lot of people like that. You don't have to thank me for doing something like that. I'm not doing it because I have to. I just wanted to. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I half expected her to get up and leave. Instead, her eyes went to the display I'd put down next to my cup. Is that an assignment briefing report? Yeah. I got it yesterday and was taking a last-minute look. What, are they giving you some puff assignment to show you off or something? I'm not sure I'd call it a puff assignment, but they aren't throwing me into a combat situation or anything. Lucky you. I don't know about lucky. I guess it's all I'm capable of right now. I know that better than anyone. She said nothing to that either. Listen, Heidi, I get that you're upset with me for being here, for taking the position you wanted, for taking the tutor you wanted. and I'm sorry those things happened. She slipped lower in her seat without saying anything, like a child sulking. I realized again how young some of these agents were. You're really going to just apologize like that? Like it changes anything? I don't like that you're upset with me. It's ridiculous that we've been walking around frustrated, glaring at each other, making snide remarks. It makes more sense to talk about the issue, doesn't it? It's not like talking and apologizing will change anything. You're right. It won't change that I'm here, and it won't change the rank I have. But just because that's true doesn't mean we have to compete. I mean, we could help each other instead. Like you helped me yesterday. And how are you going to help me? Well, you want to train to become a queen rank. I gestured at myself. I am one of those, if you didn't notice. I noticed. Trust me, everyone's been talking about it non-stop since you got here. I'm still learning, but at some point I'll be able to help you with your training. You? Help me? How do you even know how to... do you even know how you do anything you do? Well, not all of it. Not yet. Then how are you going to explain any of it to me? How long, exactly, am I supposed to wait for this supposed help? No one said anything about waiting. It's not like one person has to be more skilled than another at something for studying together to be useful. Heidi scoffed. Look, I appreciate the gesture, but this isn't like going to your university to study history or whatever you studied there. How would you know? Have you ever studied history at a university? I've been in Endgame since I was 8. I haven't studied anything but this. Exactly. Listen, I may not have grown up here, and I know that to you. I'm just an outsider. And my experience elsewhere seems useless. But sometimes a different perspective can be valuable. Regardless of what you think, my way of studying is why I'm learning fast here. And I will catch up to everyone else. And when I do, I'll help you too, if you want my help. Heidi sighed, seeming to not know what to say. After a long moment, she stood again and picked up her cup as she started away. Thanks for the offer, but you're wrong. About all of that. And she was gone. At least I tried, right? Hey. Or maybe not. She stopped about halfway across the room and was looking back at me. Good luck with your puff assignment. That was all she said before she left. It wasn't much better, but it was at least better than before. I flopped back in my seat, staring down at the table. Maybe I should just go to the lobby. Trent and his group were supposed to arrive soon, and I planned to greet them there. I wouldn't be telling them I was assigned to oversee them. Instead, I'd say I volunteered due to knowing Trent. But I didn't want to seem too enthusiastic either. Yeah, no, it's really frustrating that she's behaving like that, but, like, they do keep emphasizing the fact of, you know, she's quite young. She's been there from, Heidi's been there from a young age. This is all she knows, and basically is not an overly mature person from what we can see. So hopefully she comes around and, you know, talking to her at some point goes and pays off. But, you know, I wouldn't be telling them I was assigned to oversee them. Instead, I'd say I'd volunteered due to knowing Trent, but I didn't want to seem too enthusiastic either. I grabbed my display, planning to go to my room first. As I reached the door, I heard voices in the corridor, heading towards the lounge, and one of them was familiar. Van! They were back! My face lit up when she, Ari, and Caleb appeared, but that turned to concern as I saw Ari's face. No! Jeez! What happened there? Oh my god, what happened? It's nothing to worry about, only a minor injury. Half your face is covered in a nano healing web. What is a nano healing web? For individuals with a nano expansion, a healing web is a pattern of light that is sometimes visible on the epidermis due to concentrated packets of nanites repairing tissue damage on and around injuries. Faint healing webs are sometimes seen on people without bioexpansions, as all nanosystems comes with a limited ability to regenerate small energies. But the healing webs on those with bioexpansions are bright enough to be seen clearly on the skin and can cover huge portions of the body if one's injuries are severe enough. Alright. There are minor lacerations on the right side of my face and neck. Yeah, because half your face was scraped off when you teleported in front of an exploding building. when you teleported in front of an exploding building to rescue a civilian, but call it minor lacerations if you want. Should have seen him before the nanites healed most of it. What? What exactly happened? Were you on Cyree? I didn't know they were sending you into areas with fighting. It isn't as bad as either of them is making it out to be. There was an exploding building. That sounds pretty bad. There's been an escalation in this situation on Cyree. Looks like an order came through from the Triad to suppress the rebellion at all costs. Talks of a ceasefire have gone to hell. We were trying to get civilians out of a settlement that's become a stronghold for the dissidents when a riot broke out. Somehow, the government got some people in and, well, looks like they don't give a damn who they shut up as long as they get control back. That's horrible. Since some of us got hurt, I reckon Endgame will give them a stern talking to. But we have to maintain neutrality, so there won't be much more to it than that. Was anyone seriously injured? Ari got the worst of it, but all the injuries were fairly minor, this time. Caleb went to the gallery, saying he'd grab something for the three of us as Van and Ari sat down near the door. Instead of taking a chair, I moved towards Ari to get a closer look at his face. He raised an eyebrow as I leaned in. Looking at it will not help. I want to look anyway. Do you even know what you're looking at? Hey, normal people may not be eligible for bioenhancements like this, but I know how they work. The denser the strands are, the more damage they're repairing. Given there aren't any visible injuries anymore, there's probably a lot of subdermal damage they're working on. So there. If they're subdermal, looking at it will not reveal anything in particular to you. But I can tell that the damage was worse than you're letting on. Otherwise you wouldn't have this amount of webbing left even after they healed the surface. It doesn't matter how much you fret. It won't change the injuries were in fact minor. It's not minor. Your definition of minor is definitely wrong. We glared at her when she started laughing. Well, I glared. Ari looked at her with his normal expression. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just sitting here watching your adorable flirting with great enjoyment. My face heated up. I'm not flirting. Uh-huh. Keep telling me that as you gently cradle Ari's face in your hands. I yanked my hands away from her face, annoyed at her for teasing us, myself for how hot my face was, and for Ari looking unbothered by the entire conversation. How could they be so calm about him being hurt? Even if they were used to it, they shouldn't be this casual about it. On another subject, I didn't have time to ask about your family last night. Are they well? You're just trying to change the subject, aren't you? Oh, they finally got off their asses and gave you back your net connection? He'd returned in time to hear that and slid a tray of drinks to the center of the table, pulling a cup of tea off for himself. They're all fine. Mom was glad to finally get a message from me. Apparently, she's also been badgering Endgame about not being able to send messages. She said Dad was giving another week before he came down here personally to demand to see me. That would have been fun to watch. Well, I can't disagree with that, but I'm glad they didn't have to. They were pretty shocked by everything that's happened, but they're adjusting. What about your brother on Cyree? Oh yeah, you've got a brother up in that. You've got a brother up in the middle of that message. He's not in the middle of it. He's in a fringe settlement. They're dealing with some supply shortages, but there's not been any violence. Most of the people there are just normal citizens who want to live peacefully. That probably describes most of the people up there, really. When was the last time your parents heard from your brother? With communications down. Well, Dad has some connections, I guess. They've been able to talk to Oliver a few times on a government channel. I think last time they spoke to him was a few days ago. I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure it's pretty nerve-wracking having anyone you care about up there. They've been more worried about me, to be honest. I mean, at least they're hearing from Oliver regularly. It was just silence from me. Mom was terrified I'd been sent up there to fight on the front lines or something. No one's putting you anywhere near fighting anytime soon. Yes, I tried to assure her of that. Anyway, as for everyone else, Wayne finds the whole thing fascinating, as it's inspired him to try to get into the Special Investigations Department. Brian is carrying on as usual. He's still studying, so it wasn't as much of a shake-up for him as I expected to be. He's already settling in. Daniel took it a little harder than everyone else, but his fiancée refused to let him leave without her. It was apparently dramatic and very romantic. I'm pleased to learn they're all well. Well, considering you reached out to them before I did, I'm surprised you weren't already aware. Oh, what now? You reached out when? Right after that meeting we all had with Magnus. He told you about that? He wouldn't shut up about it, so he finally went hunting for a way to reach out to Morgan's family to reassure them she was all right. I told him it was a waste of time, but he insisted. Really now? Morgan was concerned they wouldn't worry about her, and was concerned Endgame wouldn't take the time to give them updates about her status. I only reached out once to tell them she was under my care and that she was adapting. And it wasn't a waste of time. They were really happy you contacted them. Mom said thank you. She also said it would be nice if you replied to her thank you note with something other than a short note. Especially one about how relaying her message to me might be upsetting and that you recommend they wait until I could reach out myself. But they were still grateful. Me too. I would have liked it if you told me you'd talk to them, but thank you for taking the time to do that. Van loudly sipped her drink, watching us with amusement over the top of her glass. I was doing my best to ignore her. Anyway, anything else interesting they reported? For the most part, no. I mean, they're normal people. They wouldn't have anything to say that would interest anyone outside the family. Though, Mom heard from Trent recently. They thought they were hiding out, but apparently not to the point that he couldn't find them. Who? It's the acquaintance of Morgan's who is also on Cyree, the one who will be with the researchers arriving today. Did you not read the briefing report? Probably just skimmed it, as usual. It's not my assignment. Anyways, acquaintance is kind of vague. What exactly is your history with this guy? Ex-boyfriend, maybe? Wait, seriously? It's not that shocking, Van. Yes, he's an ex. We broke up a year ago. I haven't seen or spoken to him since then. Ooh. Van, none of us want to hear that relationship drama. Thank you, Caleb. I think? I want to. It's not that interesting. A year ago, he left for his internship on Cyree. I didn't hear from him after that until right before I came here. Wait, this guy never contacted you again after leaving, and that was how he broke up with you? What a creep! When are they arriving today? Van, no. I can tell what you're thinking. And no. Come on, what kind of behavior is that? That boy needs a talking to. I suspect giving him a talking to might make it difficult for Morgan to complete her assignment. Speaking of which, I believe your first report should include the fact that he was the only one who knew you were an Esper, potentially F-class at that, and that he contacted you in recent weeks. I was planning to. Whoa, what now, what? These revelations are freaking me out. Did he just say you're a fairy Esper? You didn't know? I assumed Magnus told you all. I mean, Ari was aware. I figured it out on my own, but I assumed you'd have put it together as well, Vanessa. The fact that everyone in the organization isn't talking about it should have clued you into that. Still, given you can mimic Ari's psi waves and he's a fairy, I guess it makes sense. Not sure a normal queen could do that. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Sylvie never got the hang of your style of teleportation, did she? She did not, nor the abilities of any other F-class in Endgame. Not that there are many of them. So the previous queen couldn't mimic fairy espers? Interesting. Still, this ex-boyfriend of yours sounds suspicious as hell. I agree. Emotional. Defend Trent. Agree with Caleb. Reserve judgment. Yeah, no, the guy disappeared for like a year and then shows up again just around the time that there's they appear to be going and recruiting unregistered espers, and he's the only person who happens to know that she's an unregistered esper and possibly F class. Yeah, no, he's sketch as hell. I'm going to agree with Caleb. It does seem a little strange. There are a lot of potential connecting points, which is suspicious. But even if Trent had ulterior motives for contacting me, I'm not sure what they could have been. What would he hope to gain? Maybe he wanted to drag you off to Syrie to join the cause. He would know that was going to be a complete failure. Maybe he just wanted to rekindle things. That would have been a failure too. Perhaps he wanted to gather data from someone he believed could be a fairy. Even without involvement in illicit experimentation, that would align with his research. Any man brave enough to ghost an ex for a year, then show up to ask if he can get some data about their secret psi abilities would have to have a spine of titanium. Any ex-boyfriend of mine that tried it would have regretted it. I can't argue there, and Trent does not. I've seen him go up against roaches, so I can attest to the decided lack of titanium. Perhaps, but even their official research is about being able to mimic F-class abilities. Perhaps he wanted to explore Queen's mimicry skill. I already said even I didn't know what my rank was. There is no way he could have. Is that really true? Based on your history, isn't it possible he surmised you were able to stay hidden for so long, not only because you were a fairy esper, but because you were a queen rank capable of concealing your psi waves? I guess it's possible, though he never said anything like that to me. In any case, I'm not even interested in why he reached out to me. It's just if he's gotten a connection to the rebellion and the alleged experimentation going on. However, it would be best to stay on your guard until you know his motives. My concern is whether or not you'll be able to be impartial in all this. If you still have feelings for... I don't. Believe me, I do not have any residual feelings. At all. The other concern is if you're still pissed at him. I don't think I'm angry at him still. And even if I was, it's not enough for me to automatically assume he's some nefarious spy. But I mean... I also want to make it completely clear, if he pulls some kind of ex-boyfriend stupidity while he's here, we will kick his ass. Van, please don't jeopardize the success of Morgan's first assignment by doing anything unreasonable. Hey, I'm just saying, she's ours now. He has to keep his grubby hands off. All that aside, assuming he knows something, you think you'll be able to get anything out of him? Who can say? I've never tried to get anything out of someone before. But Trent likes to talk about his work, and if I can get him rambling, maybe he'll blurt out something he shouldn't. I'm sure you'll do fine. It's almost time for them to arrive, so I was planning to head to the lobby soon. I need to find Mara, so I guess I'll be heading off too. Caleb and I were supposed to report to the medical center. Oh, I'm sure Dr. Sasaki will be thrilled that you've all been in here for at least half an hour talking to me. I don't much care for whether he is or not. The only reason I'm even going is so I don't have to listen to Ari's nagging. And because I swear I'll murder that jerk if I wake up to find him lurking in my room again. Dr. Sasaki did that? Caleb has a bad habit of not checking in when he's not supposed to. And when he's supposed to. And Dr. Sasaki's a bloody stalker when it comes to his precious surrogate baby brother. Baby brother, huh? She stood and stretched, giving me a slight smile. Anyway, Morgan, I'll check in on you later, okay? Sure. I mean, I'm not planning to do much but say hello today. I'm not sure I'll have much to report. Van leaned down and looked me down the eye so she could, looked me down the eye as she reached over to tuck my hair behind my ear. Save the report for your actual report. I don't care how long it's been, seeing this guy again might be harder than you expect. I'm going to check in to see how you're doing, not listen to a report about your assignment. Thanks. I'm sure I'll be fine, but thanks. Good. I'll talk to you then, and I'll see you two later. After Van left, Caleb reluctantly followed suit, leaving me alone with Ari. If you'd like, I can go with you today. I don't think it's necessary. I'm just going to see him and get a feel for things. I suppose it's logical. I'm concerned this may be more difficult for you than you realize. I appreciate the concern. From all of you. But I really think you're underestimating me here. I may not be great at defending myself yet, but I'm not so fragile I can't handle talking to someone. I don't mean to underestimate, nor do I believe you are fragile. It's just my experience that emotions are difficult. You find emotions difficult? I would have never guessed. Morgan, I'm being serious. While I am aware I'm not the most emotionally demonstrative person, it isn't as if I lack them. I didn't mean it that way. Regardless of the fact that you feel you've moved on, you may find it difficult to work on an assignment that means suspecting someone you once cared for, someone you feel you know well. It's alright if you find it challenging. You are allowed to ask for help. I was a little taken aback by what seemed to be sincere concern over this. They were all overthinking it. I reached for Ari's hand, giving them a gentle squeeze. He looked down at them, seeming startled by the sudden touch. Thank you for worrying about me. I promise I'll ask for help if I need it, but I'll be okay, especially today. I understand. And Ari, you be careful too. I know you can't always help getting hurt, but this worries me. I hesitantly reached up to touch the web on his face. A lot. Ari caught my hand, and it seemed like he gave it the barest hint of a squeeze before releasing it. I'll do my best. You better get going too, or Dr. Sasaki will come looking for you. Very well. Alone again, I let out a sigh. Talking to them had made me even more nervous about it all. But it wasn't like I could hide here and avoid everything. I guess that means I should get going. First, I need to go back to my room and leave my handheld display there, and grab my jacket. I finished the last of my drink and left the lounge. I adjusted my collar for what felt like the 20th time, twisting my neck from side to side. It probably needed to be properly broken in. The only other time I'd worn this uniform had been that meeting with Magnus. There was still a bit of imposter syndrome going on. The lift slowed to a stop and took a deep breath as the door slid open, revealing the lobby. Weirdly, I hadn't been down here much. I suppose I hadn't had a reason to. It highlighted the fact that I hadn't left this building once since my arrival, though. But that was another matter. I raised my chin and stepped off, looking around. It was busy, but even so, I spotted Trent right away. My stomach fluttered anxiously. Everything I'd practiced saying over and over again flew at my head as I leaned against a pillar a short distance from the front desk where they were being checked in. What if I screw this up? I don't even know how I should approach him. He had no idea I'd be coming to greet them. What if I'm too obvious? What if he's really involved and I have to expose him? What if he's not involved and I don't learn anything? I took a slow breath and tried to focus. I'm just saying hello. I watched the familiar lines of his body as he spoke to the receptionist, as if something would give away his intentions. As if the possibility he was involved in the rebellion or that he had ulterior motives for coming here would somehow be written in his posture. Or be revealed by the awkward way he rubbed his neck. He always does that when talking to strangers. But of course, he looked the same way as always, and there was nothing strange about his behavior. The other two people with him, a man and woman, had their backs to me, but I'd seen their faces in the briefing reports. Trent turned away from the desk, shuffling his luggage to the side to let one of the others step up to check in. I looked over and our eyes met. For a moment, he paused half bent over at his bags, staring, as it was as if it took a moment to realize who it was. This guy looks checked out. Like he does not look like he's connecting with the moment. Recognition, then disbelief flashed over his features. Then he was juggling whatever was in his hand and nearly dropped it when he tried to stow it in his bag. Somehow, I expected to be angrier to see him. Weirdly, I felt nothing. Well, maybe a little sad. I left my place by the pillar as Trent finally got his things situated. He left his bags where they were and took 5 quick strides towards me, a radiant smile on his face. "Hello, Trent." He engulfed me in a hug before I got the words out, leaning back so my feet lifted off the ground. "Trent, put me down." He did so, laughing. "Hey, Moore, I missed you." And before I could respond, he leaned down to plant an enthusiastic kiss to my lips, stunning me and everyone in the immediate vicinity into absolute silence. "Please, slap him. Slap this man." Oh my god. Oh my god. Not cool. Not cool, dude. We are now on to chapter 8, Unexpected Revelation. What was he thinking? It had been a year since we last spoke, and somehow he thought that was the best greeting? In what universe did that make sense? Had the higher oxygen levels on Cyre damaged his brain? I blocked a very light punch from Ari and retaliated with one of my own. Ari blocked it easily, of course. Despite being the middle of our training session, my mind was miles away. As much as I was trying to focus on the sparring match, my thoughts kept returning to Trent. He had taken me completely by surprise, and yet I had realized at some point that he shouldn't have. He was still just himself. That idiot. In any other situation, I'd been able to yell at him, to tell him he didn't get to waltz back a year later and behave as if we were still together. But under the circumstances, I couldn't even do that. After his enthusiastic greeting, which had been in front of a lobby full of people, including his 2 research partners, I'd at least stammered out that I'd come to greet them officially because I'd volunteered to oversee their team. I'd managed to hit a tone somewhere between quiet indignation and outrage because whatever I was feeling in that moment had to be sandwiched between things like job and duty. Somehow I made it even worse that I had to keep my anger to myself. After that, he tried to pepper me with questions, but I'd blurted out an excuse, then basically ran away, telling him we'd have to catch up later. There had been an awkward chase across the lobby to the lift. "Morgan, wait, come on." "Stop following me." I was doing my absolute best to maintain some sense of dignity as I strode back the way I'd come. That was difficult to do with my face flaming and Trent following me. I pressed the button for the lift and whirled around on Trent. "I'm on duty right now, Trent. This is my place of employment now. You can't just kiss me or chase me through the lobby. Do you want to get yourself thrown out and me reprimanded for unprofessional behavior? Sorry, Morgan, I missed you. I wasn't considering where we were. Listen, I only came down to say hello because I volunteered to oversee your research team when I saw your name on the list. I didn't come down here for this. Can we at least meet for dinner later? I have so many things I want to ask. So many things to tell you. I don't know. I'll have to check my schedule." The door behind me slid open and I fled into the lift. Trent tried to follow me, but I planted a hand squarely on his chest to stop him entering. "Agents only. And you need to finish checking in. You can't leave your luggage in the middle of the lobby." He glanced back over his shoulder, and I took the opportunity of him being off guard to give him a light push backward, just to allow the door to close. And that was the end of that. I'd spent the entire way back to my flat panicking. I didn't expect to be reprimanded for that, but it didn't stop me my worrying about it. And I had to file a report where I mentioned not only our history, but also that he kissed me upon seeing me again. I'd been tempted to leave it out, but considering how many people saw it, what was the point? Not to mention the fact that everything went on in the public spaces of this building was recorded anyway. So everyone got to read about my past relationship drama and how it might affect my assignment. The council, I assumed, Magnus, Caleb, Ari, and somehow that last one bothered me the most. How humiliating. Before I even realized what was happening, my world tilted and my back hit the mat with a heavy thump. Oh, spicy. Ari was crouched over me, pinning me to the floor, and our sparring match was over. Your loss. Sorry. His expression softened a little, and for a long moment there was only silence, punctuated by our breathing. "You're distracted today, Morgan." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll try to focus better." Neither of us moved, even though his grip on me eased. Somehow the air felt heavy, thick with tension that wasn't from my being distracted. I thought he would say something else. But an image of Van popped in my head right at that moment. Ari sensed it too, because he was on his feet in an instant. He offered me a hand from which to pull myself to my feet, right as Van came inside the room. Ari swiftly walked to where our water bottles were waiting. I stood there trying to shake it off, the strange tension from that moment. I couldn't decide if I should be grateful or regretful Van had showed up when he did. Then again, as soon as she opened her mouth, I decided to be regretful. "Morgan, I just read your report. Why didn't you tell me what happened when we talked last night?" "Well, I'm not surprised she's yelling at me about it." Sorry about that. I was still processing. I wasn't trying to hide it or anything. It just threw me a little. I needed some time to think about it." As soon as she reached me, she gripped my shoulders tightly, worry written on her features. "I thought it was weird you turned Mara and I down for dinner last night. Are you really okay?" "Yes, I really am okay." "Do I need to kill him?" "I can kill him." "Please do not murder anyone, Van." "I can't believe he did that." "I want to say I can't either, but it wouldn't be true. Regardless, it wasn't that big a deal." "It is a big deal. You don't ghost someone for a year, then kiss them without consent." "I don't disagree, but I guess he figured I would be fine with it. The year aside, we dated for 2 years prior." "Vanessa, I hope you realize you're interrupting us." Yeah. Deal with it, night boy. This is important." Even Morgan said it's not a big deal. "I'm sure your complaints about finding what happened at the same time as the rest of us can wait." No, I definitely deserve proprietary information, thank you very much." She jerked her thumb towards Ari, giving me a bewildered look. "Can you believe this guy?" Without thinking, I embraced her tightly. "Whoa! Hey! You sure you're okay?" I released her, still smiling. "Yes, I am okay, I promise. But thank you for worrying." "Well, of course I'd worry, unlike some people. I never said I wasn't also concerned. Listen, it was just a kiss. I've kissed him many times before. It was hardly traumatic. The fact he's so enthusiastic about seeing me kind of works in my favor, right? I mean, for getting information and all." "Oh my god, Morgan, you're killing me! You don't have to let this guy do whatever he wants to you so you can get some information. It's not that kind of mission. I'm not suggesting that I drag him to my flat, tear his clothes off, and seduce him, Van. I just feel it would be counterproductive for me to stay angry about it, or to have you harass him. We can ask for someone else to deal with him if you need to. It doesn't have to be you." "I don't think that's necessary." "Ari, help me out here." I intended to avoid discussing it, since it didn't seem you wished to. However, Vanessa has a point. You are very preoccupied today, Morgan. Perhaps it had more of an impact on you than you're letting on. "Yes, I'm distracted, but that doesn't mean I'm ready to give up on the assignment yet. I haven't even gotten started. And while you say it's not a big deal, he touched you without your consent. It is all right if it upsets you. You shouldn't try to hide it. You two are blowing this out of proportion. Perhaps you aren't taking it seriously enough." "What's that supposed to mean?" Van had gone silent, watching Ari carefully. I noticed her eyes fixed on his hands, which were clasped in front of him. "It does not mean anything in particular. I apologize. Perhaps we should end the session for today. As you have to see the research team again later, you should take some time to meditate and clear your thoughts before then. We can try our session again tomorrow." "Wait, Before I can even get the response out, he left. What the heck? I wasn't that distracted. He didn't have to leave like that." Stunned, I stood staring at the door, trying to figure out what just happened. "Did you see that?" "See Ari ditch me?" "Yes, I was standing right here when it happened." Van gave the back of my head a solid thump. "Not that, wise ass. The way he was tapping on the top of his hand like that." "Well, he does that sometimes, right? I catch him doing it sometimes. At his temple, the side of his neck. I guess it's a habit of his." Not exactly as simple as a habit. He does it when he's stressed or upset. It's a technique he... Yeah, no. Rev, since you missed the kiss, she did not slap him. She basically pushed him away and ran back into the elevator. And basically told him off for behaving inappropriately at her workplace. But yeah, Van, he does it when he's stressed or upset. It's a technique he uses to keep his emotions in check. They taught it to help him avoid accidental use of psi, since getting worked up could cause him to inadvertently teleport someone into orbit or something. So, it's a calming technique? I was not aware of that. I think he's pissed. At me? I was just a little distracted. I couldn't even imagine Ari angry. No, I mean he's pissed at Trent. Oh. Really? Yeah, I mean, I'm pissed at him too. Though I reckon my reason is probably different. You're really not mad at him? Because it's okay to be mad. I'm mostly just embarrassed. I was trying to show that I'm taking this whole thing seriously, but my first report was a melodramatic retelling of how my boyfriend ghosted me for a year, and kissed me in the lobby of Course Solaris before I could ply him for information and find out if he's up to something shady. And everyone had to read that. The council, Magnus, Ari. So it bothers you that Ari read it? Yeah, we're gonna go the affectionate route of course it does. So she's mentioned multiple times now that it bothers her, so of course it does. It's humiliating to have that kind of thing aired in front of him. Everyone. When I said it, the word fell a little flat. Actually, the one that bothered me the most was Ari, wasn't it? That realization hit me hard in the gut. I mean, yes, it bothered me that others read it, but the thought of Ari seeing it and concluding I wasn't serious. Ari, shouldn't have to be angry for my sake over something so trivial. None of you should. Well, I don't deny he's probably angry for your sake, but I doubt that's the only reason. You mean he's also mad because I've been distracted all day? I am trying. No, Morgan. That's not what I meant. That's not what I mean. I mean, he's upset Trent kissed you because he's jealous. Jealous? Ari? The thought sent very surprising butterflies racing through me, but I wasn't sure she was right about that. I could be wrong, but it's not like him to care about that kind of thing. I mean, if some guy kissed me, I doubt Ari would even understand there was a reason to be mad. He'd say something ridiculous like, "Is a kiss even that important, Vanessa?" Then he'd go on with, "If you didn't like it, can't you forget it happened and move on? After all, you already broke the man's nose and threatened to rip out his arms out of their socket. Is that not enough? But in your case, he's upset that you don't seem upset." It's not that I'm not upset about it. Not enough to rip his arms out of their socket. I think you're the only person I know that would threaten to go that far. I was silent a moment before sneaking a little look at her. Do you really think Ari's jealous? Why? You want him to be? No. I mean, I don't know. Nothing about his behavior looks like jealousy to me. Until you showed up, he hadn't even mentioned it. But there was that strangely tense moment after I'd lost the sparring match. Hey, remember what he told you the first day we met? I'm great at reading people. And I've known Ari since we were both kids. I mean, granted, he's a lot harder to read than most people, given how much he represses his emotions. But if it annoyed him you were distracted, he'd just say so. Instead, he seems off. And you know, when I look back on the last few weeks, he's been a little off-kilter since shortly after you arrived. Something about my expression must have given me away. How stupidly giddy that made me. You look happy. I shouldn't be. We haven't known each other all that long. How long do you reckon it takes? I don't know. Trent and I knew each other for several years. Ari and I have known each other a month and a half. And now isn't the time for this. I need to focus on this assignment, on training, on... Van covered my mouth with her hand, cutting me off. Morgan, there's never a time for this kind of thing. Ever. This stuff happens when it happens. And take it from me, if you're feeling something, don't wait to act on it. Doesn't matter if you're an endgame agent, an archaeologist, or a student. You never know what tomorrow holds. She held up her artificial hand, wriggling and wiggling her fingers. It clicked softly as she did so, one of the blue lights flickering. When we lost Sylvia 10 years ago, I was there. I did my best to save her and the others, and in the end, I was the only one left. I lost my legs, lost my arm. More than that, I lost my friends. I almost lost my life. With surprising seriousness, she gripped my shoulders and gently stared into my eyes. The moment you're certain how you feel, tell him. Don't wait, and don't think you have to know each other for years to fall in love. Emotions don't work that way. You fall when you fall. And that's all the sage advice you get today. You probably want to clean up before you go meet that dumbass kiss snatcher, and maybe meditate like Ari said, or whatever. So I'll leave you to it. That Trent kid better behave himself today, or so help me. Don't worry, I won't drop my guard this time. It'll be fine. Good. She shot me a grin as she left. See ya, Morgan. And Van, thank you. No problem, girl. Okay, this time I'll be serious. I sternly told my reflection as I gave myself a last check to make sure I looked more or less like a proper endgame agent. Though, to be fair, I wasn't not serious yesterday. Stop arguing with me. I wonder if it was bad I was already having complete conversations with myself over this whole thing. At any rate, I'd come up with a plan of action today. I would spend a little time overseeing his little research group and meet his research partners. Then I'd ask him to catch up over lunch or dinner. I wouldn't want him to take the wrong way, so I'd have to keep a bit of distance between us while still being friendly. We were friends for several years before starting to date, so it should be possible. Theoretically. Then again, we were kids. Things were surely different now, but I would have to try. I smoothed my uniform and headed out. I'm going to take this moment to have some water. Hydration. Okay. Anyways, heading out. I was leaning against the wall outside my flat, clearly waiting for me. What are you doing here? If you wanted to talk, you could have messaged me. I didn't wish to disturb you if you're still meditating. It's not disturbing me, and I've stopped meditating an hour ago. I feel I should apologize for ending your training session earlier, though I wanted to allow you a break. The truth is, I was agitated. I felt it would be best for me to step away for a while. Are you alright? I'm fine. I've spent the past few hours alone, refocusing my thoughts. Perhaps the overworking, as you call it, has begun taking its toll. Everyone calls it overworking, Ari. Perhaps. I was worried you were frustrated about me being distracted today. That is hardly worth being frustrated over. He hesitated, looking away as if he wanted to say something, but wasn't sure he should. Are you going to meet with the research team again? Yes, they're scheduled to be in the research archive soon. I decided I shall go with you this time. That's unnecessary. He accosted you in the lobby. I believe it is. I wouldn't say he accosted me. Then you were fine with him forcing a kiss on you in front of everyone? No. If you weren't fine with it, and you didn't consent, he did, in fact, accost you. I doubt he sees it that way. Does it matter how he sees it? Well, I suspect intent factors in somehow. I'm certain he viewed it as greeting his girlfriend the way he always has. And after going a year without contacting you, surely he has lost the right to call you that. Well, it's not that I disagree. Then why do you continue to make excuses for him? I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I just can't muster the energy to stay angry about this. If he was a stranger, of course I'd be furious. But I dated him for so long, and we never officially ended things. Officially? Not speaking for a year is not officially ending things? He sighed, frowning. I am admittedly inexperienced in this area, so perhaps I'm mistaken. In the end, it doesn't matter. You are engaging with him in a professional setting, and he has shown that he does not and may not respect that. Whether or not you see it as a problem, it is my duty to protect you. Hence, I come with you today. I sighed. It wasn't that I couldn't understand where he was coming from, but I don't think you should. You're the one who said the overworking was getting to you. Why add something else to your plate? It seems pointless, and I can manage on my own without adding to your workload. I can find other ways to ease my workload. This, however, I consider important. I think we should accept his help, because this Trent guy needs a good slap, honestly, so we are going to accept his help. Though his offer was out of sincere concern, I wasn't sure having him there would be helpful. I also didn't expect I could say no, and I couldn't deny I was pleased he was worrying. But I could only think how embarrassing it would be to have Ari watching me interact with Trent. Even so, alright, I accept. Because despite everything, the greater part of me understood where Ari was coming from, and I did want him there. I was happy he was offering. I'll allow you to take the lead. I only intend to observe. If necessary, we can make up a story about my needing to use the archives as well. I could also tell him I wanted to introduce my teacher to him. Knowing his topic of study, that would make sense. And we can say that you wanted to be there since overseeing the research team is my first official assignment, so we can make it to be another part of training. That would also give you a reason to stay close by. If you say you just need to be there for other work, you won't have a reason to stay with us. Fair enough. That should be an acceptable cover story for my presence. With that decided, Ari and I headed down to the archives together. On the way, I messaged Trent to tell him I'd be there, even though my name was already listed on their schedule as their contact. Having seen him again yesterday, do you still have reservations about his potential involvement in all this? I didn't interact with him enough to form any solid opinions, but he seemed the same as always. I think it's too early to tell. That's not unexpected. I felt you may have had some sort of special insight since you knew him so well in the past. Unfortunately not. I'm hoping if we can spend some time talking about their research in depth, it'll help. They will be here for 6 days. There's still plenty of time. I'm less worried about the time limit and more worried there's nothing useful to learn from him. In some ways, that would be for the best, would it not? Be the best for Trent, but not necessarily for Endgame, since it would still leave us without information we need about what's happening on Cyre. That is true, but we have other ways of obtaining information. I'm sure the entire investigation isn't balancing on your retrieving information from Trent. There are teams looking into things on Cyre. They're simply having to proceed with extreme caution. That, at least, is somewhat comforting. When we reached the research archives, I, as usual, had to stop inside the door and admire it all. Oh, we have a visitor. Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Cat. How's it going? Did you wake up from your nap? Did you have a good nap? You're looking very sleepy. Do you want to come say hi? Oh, buddy, you are sharp. Here, let me help you. Oh. So you guys can see him. It is the big boy. The big boy is coming to say hello. Yes. All right. The big kitty boy. I'm just gonna... Bubsy. Mr. Bubs. Please stop headbutting the microphone, Mr. Bubs. Mr. Bubs. Yes, it is a microphone. Oh. I don't know. I don't think you guys can hear him, but he is currently... Oh, you can maybe see him a little bit. He's loving up the microphone right now. Yeah, you're a good boy. Do you want to just lie down and I can keep reading the story? Yeah? Okay. Van had brought me here before, but I just couldn't get over it. Ari paused, glancing back at me. Morgan? Sorry, this place always takes my breath away. He cocked an eyebrow, glancing around the large room. Hey, you grew up here. I'm sure you're used to it. I've never seen a library this big before. With the net, there wasn't a need for them. Of course, most of the information in here wasn't accessible via the net for security reasons. Like, this place is huge, because, like, look in the background, you've got these different tiered levels here of books, and it leads all the way up here, and then there's even books up top there, though I'm not really sure how you'd access those. No. Alright. I suppose it is an unusual sight for those outside this organization. Only a little. I was also always impressed by how busy it was. There was quite a lot of people around, including a full table full of junior agents. Hello? Are we going to stop moving around? Hello? Hello, kitty boy. My hands are a little busy. I can't give you... Okay. I know you want scruffles, but I'm a little busy. Yeah. I know. You're a good boy. No, you're a good boy. You're such a good boy. Casey and Birdie were there. Heidi as well. I wasn't sure what they could all be working on. Surely they didn't get homework after they'd become agents. Birdie noticed me watching and brightened as she waved enthusiastically. Laughing, I waved back. You shouldn't encourage her. They're supposed to be working. I'm sure her work will survive a nonverbal greeting from across the room. Whoa! This place is amazing! I stiffened at the sound of Trent's voice, but did my best to force attention out of my shoulders as I turned to face him. You're a little early. So are you. He came further inside, and I prepared myself to step out of arm's reach if it looked like he was going to make another move on me. Ari was already at my side, though. Oh, who's this? This is Ariel Vaughn. He's my teacher. I thought you might be interested in meeting some of the other agents. Did you just say Ariel Vaughn, the highest-ranked knight in Endgame? His loud exclamation caused quite a few people to look our way, including the table of junior agents. Trent, we are in a place where people are working. Maybe lower your voice? And yes, I said that. I wasn't sure he even heard the part where I asked him to lower his voice. His eyes were wide as a huge grin broke across his face. He stepped closer to Ari, holding out his hand. This is incredible! I honestly couldn't imagine getting a chance to meet you while I was here. You know him... of him? Are you kidding, Morgan? I've talked to you about him before. He's one of the most well-known fairy espers. In fact, reading about his story got me interested in this branch of research. Wait, that was... I remembered numerous conversations with Trent gushing over an F-class esper in Endgame, one that had defined almost everything we'd learned about them. That was you? I suppose so. I mean, it all made sense. Even Ari had indicated most of what Endgame knew of fairies it learned from him. I just hadn't put it together at the time. Somehow, that made this all the weirder. Ari, bewildered, shook Trent's hand, looking like he did not want to at all. Trent was still grinning enthusiastically, even as Ari wrestled his hand away. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions? I mean, my entire path in life was pretty much defined by reading about you. Meeting you like this is amazing. Ari took half a step back, clasping his hands in front of him. I don't mind answering a few questions, though much of what I can tell you can also be found in Endgame's records, many of which you should have access to with your current clearance level. Oh, don't worry. Looking up the research and studies done on you is on our to-do list. Studies? I mean, it was obviously done studies on him, but saying it like that felt dehumanizing. Still, that can't compare with talking to you in person. Hey, do you think we could get a demonstration of your abilities? I am not certain. My gaze went to Ari's hand. He was rapidly tapping against the back of his left one. Stealing my jaw, I stepped in front of him just as Trent's two companions joined us. Trent, enough. Ari didn't come here to be interrogated by you. I only wanted to introduce him. I can see you're excited, but shouting at him in a room full of people is not the best way to go about talking to him. Oh, haha, sorry. I tend to be a little overenthusiastic sometimes. I didn't mean to come across too forward. Ari placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing slightly, a gesture I took as an unspoken thank you. Morgan is correct. We may be able to talk another time. It looks like your companions are here anyway. Right. Introductions. We didn't get a chance for it yesterday. This is Gina Taylor, and this is Matt Aries. It's so great to meet you. Honestly, Trent would not shut up about you the entire trip here. I wasn't sure what to say about that, to be honest. He neglected to mention your position. Imagine our surprise to discover you're not only an Esper, but a member of Endgame. There was something odd in his tone of voice. Judgmental, almost. I instantly disliked him. And a fairy, at that. A flutter of anxiety went through me when he mentioned that. Had Trent told him that? What makes you... Come to think of it, I guess that's why Mr. Vaughn is helping you train, right? I still can't get over the fact that you're a queen rank. I had no idea. The first known queen ranked fairy. That's pretty incredible. What little noise had been going on around us died instantly when Trent, who clearly had no concept of voice modulation, said that very loudly. I cast a glance back over my shoulder, and sure enough, the entire table of junior agents was gaping at us. There were a few whispers, and it was obvious that was it for that little secret. Did he just say fairy? Her? She's an F class? Trent, seriously? Oh, was I not supposed to say that? Though not a secret, Morgan's status was not well known, certainly not as widely known as mine. He glanced at the others who were still looking our way. It appears that is about to change. Sorry, Morgan. Looks like I'm 2 for 2 when it comes to screwing up, aren't I? I don't like this guy. This guy kind of sucks. There's been a lot of explanations after Trent's loud declaration about me being F-class. Ari had briefly left to inform Magnus there was about to be a ripple effect as the information about me spread through the organization. Gina, like Trent, seemed fascinated by my status and story. I felt obligated to give them an explanation of how I'd been discovered. It was an abridged version that did not mention a kidnapping or arrest off the street. Though no one had told me I couldn't share that little tidbit, it felt wrong to share something that would be misunderstood or taken out of context. I still wasn't sure where I stood on Trent, much less Gina. As for Matt, I didn't trust him as far as I could spit. He seemed intent on peppering me with questions, some of which were quite personal. This time, it was Trent that had to step in and tell him to knock it off. It cemented my dislike for him, but I had to keep that contained. At any rate, all of that ensured all their research session was properly derailed, especially after Ari returned. After a couple of hours, we left them there in the archive staff to monitor them. But before that, I had agreed to have dinner with Trent, ostensibly to catch up. And that's how we ended up in the garden for an after-dinner walk. Ari was nearby, but staying well out of sight. I had no idea Endgame kept quiet that some of their agents were fairies. If I had known that, I wouldn't have said anything to Matt and Gina. I definitely wouldn't have blurted it out like that. It's not like it's some big secret. I guess they were worried it would cause even more of a fuss than bringing me here already did. You saw the look on everyone's faces. Those junior agents were shocked. Yeah, they seemed a little stunned. I guess I assumed everyone knew. Some of them were already a little irate that I'm here. This won't help. Why would they be irate? I mean, I'm an outsider to them. Most of them came here as children. Well, at least one was aiming for a promotion up to queen rank, and I conveniently showed up out of nowhere. You should be aware of how some people view F-class. I didn't expect that kind of mentality to exist here. I mean, Mr. Vaughn, Ari is well respected, isn't he? He's been here a long time. I haven't. Looks like I really screwed up. I'm sorry, Morgan. Well, you didn't know. Still, I don't like how they're forcing you to keep hiding who and what you are. You had to do that for years. And if they're going to force you to be here, they can at least let you be open about it. It's not like I was ordered to hide it. It was suggested I not bring it up. Right. I'm sure I can guess how suggestions work here. I don't like it. Truthfully, I don't like that you even have to be here. Can you imagine how shocked I was when your mother told me? At least now I know why you didn't contact me after getting the card I sent. I let that slide for now, though it wasn't the reason at all. It's not all that bad. I mean, it took a while to get used to it, but there are good people here. They've gone well out of their way to make me comfortable, so I'm trying to make it work. But what about your plans? Your education? What about... Trent, there's no reason to discuss any of that anymore. Listen, why don't we talk about something else? Like your research, maybe. What's been going on for the last year? What have you been working on? Well, I mean, you said you got a report about it after you volunteered to oversee our research here, so you know the gist of it. But all I got was an overview. I don't understand the relevance of fairy espers to what you're aiming for. No one has worked out how to replicate rank-level psi waves. What makes you think you'll be able to recreate tech that mimics some F-class rook? It has to do with how Kitty! Bye, Kitty! Okay. It has to do with how fairy psi waves work. Well, how we theorize they work. We're here to review Endgame's research to see if we can validate some of our theories. And? What are your theories? Well... He took a deep breath, and that gleam came to his eye, the one he got when he started talking about his research. We think N-class espers have a unique sort of psi that resonates within an individual's nanosystem. For ranked espers, this resonance is stronger than other espers. Their nanites help amplify their natural psi in a way that gives them an additional boost. So that's why their scores are so high. You mentioned this concept of resonance before, if I recall. Probably, but there's not a large body of information about it outside of Endgame, since most known ranked espers are here. The type of promotion you mentioned earlier is not really something known outside of Endgame and some research facilities, but it's only relevant to a very small subset of infantry level espers. For anyone outside that small group, the enhancements are dangerous, and if it works, their powers are unstable, or they rapidly go into permanent burnout. Oh, I know, Rev, that you were speculating earlier that there was... Don't eat that, cat! Sorry. Oh. No. No, 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 no. No. Oh my god. Pretty much. No, you don't get to glare at me. You don't get to eat random scraps of plastic. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. Okay. For anyone outside that small group, the enhancements are dangerous, and if it works, their powers are unstable or they rapidly go into permanent burnout. And I know that earlier, Rev, you were speculating about permanent burnout. It may very well be that they were talking about. We think it's something to do with this resonance. The higher a nano-esper's internal resonance, the stronger and more stable their abilities are. These infantry are the only ones who can slip into a higher level of resonance and increase their abilities. Those are interesting theories. The most advanced research on how to boost a person's psionic output is all in Endgame's hands because a lot of that research is illegal. That makes sense. I still don't see what this has to do with your research, though. Right? Well, that's the thing. As you know, mechanically replicating psi waves is pretty difficult. We have tech that can create small psionic fields, but artificial psi can only hit about EA 5.6. We theorize that's because we can't replicate nanite resonance with tech. Okay, that's a fair hypothesis. But what does that have to do with fairies? This is where it gets interesting. You see, we don't think F-class psi resonates within the nanosystems in the same way N-class psi does. Fairy psi is just inherently different in structure. We suspect, and some of our research confirms, that fairy psi waves have internal resonance, which is why they consistently are stronger than their nano counterparts. That makes their psi waves much more complex at a glance, but nanite resonance doesn't play a role at all. So if this supposed nanite resonance is a hurdle to replicate more powerful artificial psi waves, you think you might be able to replicate fairy psi waves more easily? Exactly. We had some luck in a lab setting, but there's so little information on F-class espers, and our test subject pool is small. Most people willing to come forward to be a part on our research are low level, and we've noticed F-class psi waves get more complex the higher a person's score. But imagine if we could replicate some specific type of psi waves. Right now, espers make up such a small percentage of the population. Here on the day side, the higher ranks are mostly in endgame because they're always identified at such a young age. If we could recreate powerful and stable artificial psi, so many people could be helped. Being able to replicate biokinesis, for instance, would have huge implications. The implications for the medical field seem pretty powerful. Even with bioenhancements, the nano system is limited in what it can do. But biokinesis has its limits. Still, I suppose it would be great for something like this, if something like this could be used to help people. Why else would we be doing it if not for that? Aren't you worried people might use it for other things? It's not like psi weapons don't already exist. And if you figure out how to produce stronger artificial psi to help people, others will figure out how to do it to harm people. This is important research, but it also worries me. I understand your concerns. I really do. But I think the good we can do will balance things out. People always think that, and it never turns out that way. I'm not sure it matters anyways. The ethical constraints on this type of research are pretty strict. We're limited when it comes to practical application, and there are some things we can't test under the Triad's laws and treaties. Under the Triad, huh? Will that remain true if Cyre can break away? That's a tough question. Here we go. This is what we need to talk about. How is it up there, really? Oh, that's right. You have a brother in the colonies, don't you? I do. Though he's the agricultural manager in a fringe settlement. Resni? Resni, a small agricultural settlement on Cyre. It's far from the major settlements, and its economy is less focused on mining and more on food production for other settlements. Due to its isolated location, it's usually far from any fighting when violence inevitably bubbles up again. But it can still be impacted by supply shortages or transport blockades. I won't lie, it was bad when we left. I'm sure it's worse now. Even before the fighting broke out, things were tense. You try to just live your life, but you can't get away from it. Everything up there is driven by the mines, and everyone knows someone in that business. Alright, thanks for the heads up, Rev. I'm probably going to be ending soon. I'm trying to find a good point to leave this off for this week. The working conditions are appalling. Hell, half the people on our team are doing this research because they want to help some family member or friend battling lung rot or Thresher's syndrome. And then with the situation of the new quotas, not to mention delayed supply deliveries, lack of funding for basic infrastructure repairs and improvements, the taxes are pretty bad too. To be honest, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. This has been building for longer than I've been up there. Sounds like you have a lot of sympathy for the dissidents. Morgan, nearly everyone up there has sympathies with the dissidents. And not because of the mines and other issues, then because New Albion is trying to crack down on the Esper relocation situation, and there's a lot of Espers who don't want that. Almost no one up there agrees with the new restrictions, much less with any attempts to deport them back to Archelaus. So the Esper thing is a big issue up there? I didn't realize that. Why do you think more Espers aren't willing to join up for testing and research trials? I mean, we pay them for it, pretty well too, and it's still not enough incentive for most of them to come out in the open. If they can make it to adulthood without being detected here, then they go up there so they can live the lives they want. But they continue to fear being found in New Albion because they continue to fear being found out because New Albion doesn't want them there either. Well, I definitely know what it's like to feel you have to hide it. At least it's easier to hide it there than here. There are plenty of people who are willing to ignore policies or laws. I wish I'd come back sooner. I could have gotten you out of here. I still could, you know. How's that going to work, do you think? Well, I was looking forward to seeing you again so much, and now none of it has gone the way I thought it would. He took my hands, holding them tightly. I was really hoping to get the chance to say sorry. Sorry for letting things go for so long without a word from me. Everything was so hectic after my arrival. I didn't have time to stop and take a breath for weeks. The power grid was in and out for a month, and we were on emergency reserves. After that, the water reclamation plant went down, and we were all helping with repairs because we couldn't get a proper repair team in. You wouldn't believe some of the issues the colonies face on a daily basis. It takes forever to get anything done. Before I knew it, months had gone by. And then I was afraid to reach out. Too afraid to be angry. See, here's the thing. I know, Rev, that you're asking if I think that he's sincere. At this point, it doesn't necessarily matter if he's been sincere. He still hasn't contacted her in a year, and he's just admitted that he was too afraid to go and reach out, that he'd be angry. So his fear of her backlash prevented him from actually going and reaching out, because maybe at that point he could have reached out and gone and explained what happened, and she could have been understanding. But at this point, Morgan, I was angry, hurt, worried. I'm sorry. Can we try again, Morgan? I miss you. Slap him! Slap him! Every time something great happened or we made some breakthrough, I missed being able to tell you about it. Slap him. Then why did you never reach out? He's a coward. Slap him. I couldn't ask that. I didn't want to ask that. I didn't want to rehash these feelings or reopen these wounds. I closed the door on all that months ago. What do you expect me to say to that, Trent? I forced myself to move on because I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. Do you believe I'd wait forever? No. No. I didn't think that. I didn't want that. I just hoped maybe we could... The answer is no. No. Haha. I knew you would say that. Slap him. Slap this man. Then why did you even ask? Because I had to. He shoved his hands in his pocket and gave me a lopsided grin. I hope you realize I won't give up that easily. Slap him. I wasn't even sure how to respond to that. Things were awkward afterward. It didn't take long for Trent to make an excuse and leave, smiling like he always did, promising we'd talk more tomorrow, saying he was looking forward to really digging into the archives. And I didn't know what to do with myself afterwards. I needed to file my report. There were some things Trent had said I figured were important, but I couldn't make myself go back to my flat to do it. I just stood in place trying to sort myself out. I was so lost in thought, I didn't even sense Ari until he said my name. I jumped at the sound of his voice, having forgotten he was, even nearby. He heard all that. All of it. I couldn't even face him. He just stood behind me without moving. Yeah, no, she is definitely pacifist. Oh. I feel like at this point she's had such negative emotions for such a long period of time, and now is being faced with this situation. Like, yes, I am ready to pacifist over his nose. I don't know, there's something so incredibly hurtful to go and see by that kind of behavior, of just this idea that ends up coming from that kind of mentality of that dude, where it's like, it doesn't matter to him the fact of that he's hurt her to that point, that, you know, he didn't talk to her for a year, and he was so afraid for himself of her being upset with him that he didn't reach out. And it's very selfish behavior, and a lot of the time there can be a lot of people who won't necessarily stand up for themselves when being treated like that, like she's clearly going and doing. So, and, you know, I've seen enough people go and get hurt by other people who behave very selfishly towards somebody they have romantic interest in, and it's, yeah. Are you alright? You seem distressed. I'm okay. It's alright to not be okay. I clenched my jaw, trying to steady my emotions. I'm okay. I said it again firmly. I've luckily been with my husband. We've been together for 10 years, so I have luckily not had to deal with F-boy behavior firsthand for a long time. But Still makes me mad when I see it, so. Ari stepped around me and I lowered my head because I didn't want to know what sort of expression I was making, and I didn't want him to see. To my surprise, he placed his fingers under my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. Are you really okay? I'm not sure. Without thinking, I stepped closer and rested my forehead against his chest. He stiffened as if he was uncertain how to respond to that gesture. At that moment, I felt his hands on my back, hesitant and gentle. Aww. You do not have to include Trent's report in your request on your report. Yeah. Yeah, no, it is amazing how much selfish behavior can go and hurt other people, and they're just totally, completely unaware of it. Isn't that right, Mr. Bubs? Mr. Bubsy boy. It is not cool to have selfish behavior and hurt other people. Yes. Do you have anything you want to say? Do you have anything you want to add to this? Add to this discussion? F-boys are not cool. Do not be an F-boy. Be like Mr. Bubs. Be like Falcor. Be a good boy. Yes. Alright. Alright, I'll keep reading it in a second. Give me a moment. All right. I looked up at him, surprised he said that. I don't believe it's relevant. It can stay between us. And Bubs is loving up the microphone. I hope you guys can hear him purring. I'm gonna move the camera down so you can see this. He's giving the microphone some love. He's sending love out to you guys. Have a good drive, Rev. Be safe. All right. I laid my head on his chest again, smiling slightly. Bubs, come on, buddy. Thank you. We stood like that for a while, until I was feeling a little more control of my emotions. Then Ari walked me back to my room where Van was waiting to hear what had happened and to find out if she needed to beat anyone up. Chapter 9, I think that is where we're going to be going and leaving it for this week. This was quite the heavy episode today. Bubs, come on, we're saying goodbye to people. This is quite the heavy episode today. But definitely getting into the story. It's getting juicy, that is for sure. So the recording will be up on YouTube. Bubs, please, give me a second. And we will be picking it up again same time as usual next week. And Bubs says goodbye to everybody. Have a good day. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good one.